Yo, 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 welcome back to Living for a Living with Joey Bradley. This episode's guest, for me growing up, was the inspiration in terms of quarterback play. As a smaller guy, undersized, he kind of gave me hope and also got the pleasure to get coached by him when I was young, which was really cool. Doesn't really need much of an introduction as he's just the Washington State Cougar legend, my guy Jason Gesser.
Living for a living, baby. How you doing?
I've been on lockdown for like 2 months now, and I've seen about I've had a conversation with a real person, maybe only two people. So I've just said I'm letting it grow.
So what is the lockdown in core for you guys? What does that mean?
Like right now, well, this week we got our curfew moved back to 11 p.m. Before that, it was either like 8 or 9 p.m. And literally nothing has been open for 2 months, man. Like just grocery stores.
And where are you again?
I'm in a small town outside of Prague in Czech Republic.
Jeez.
And so it's been I mean, there wasn't much going on when everything was open. And boy, ever since everything's been closed, it's been a little bit slow. But it's kind of given me a chance to like do all this kind of stuff and do some other editing. And so I've just been trying to use my time wisely, you know?
Stay sane. Yeah, stay sane, exactly.
Dude, trying. Keyword trying. There's been
So is this the first lockdown or is this the second one?
this is second for me. I think my first one I was in Barcelona for.
Okay.
And that was like Barcelona, Spain was one of the harder hit countries or whatever. And so that was like same exact kind of thing here, and that we were about 2 months of curfew, could only go to the grocery store. But there it was like strict, where like they had cops sitting on the streets like giving people 600 euro fines if you couldn't prove that you were going to the grocery store or the pharmacy. Like I heard of friends or like friends of friends getting tickets. You had to be by yourself no matter what, not even with someone in your own house. I heard of friends getting tickets while driving in the car with their wife or girlfriend that they lived with. And like, you know, the people at the grocery stores would tell you, hey, make sure you keep your receipt in case the cops stop you on the way back. That, I mean, it's like, dude, what? I have a bag full of groceries. What you think?
Yeah.
What am I doing? And so that was a little, that one was crazy. And there I was living with my now ex-girlfriend, and that was a test. That was a test, you know. That was interesting. And we were in a probably like 500 600 square foot apartment, and with two cats, and boy, it was it was fun. Let me just put it that way.
It was a blast.
It was fun.
Life learning experience. Yeah. That's a blast.
And so at least out here, I've been I've at least, I don't know, I've been completely alone here. So my two lockdown experiences are like literally opposite ends of the spectrum. And so
So you're saying, yeah.
it's, I think though, I heard today, I think a couple stores are starting to open up here. And then my buddy, the one guy I hang out with who works at the restaurant that became a regular at, he said on Monday or Tuesday, I think they can start serving. And so
I mean, they're trying to go 2.0 over here. They did it, back in, gosh, what was that? March-ish, whatever, everything down. And then now they're trying to go back into the whole thing again, and put all the stuff out there. And it's not going to happen. I'll tell you that
much. No, I don't. And especially like once you get out of the cities, I think like, relatively speaking, once you get out of the major cities, everywhere's fairly conservative and, has a little bit more money. Like my buddy was saying, LA is pretty strict right now, but you go down to Orange County where, there's some money, and nobody's masked up. No stores are open.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, the thing about it all, right? It's like, and it's sad to say, but it's people don't understand that we hold the true power, right?
Totally.
If we want to open our shops, we'll open the shops. I mean, I've heard, examples over here, and I've seen some things and same story, just like you're saying about guys getting pulled over with their wives and getting tickets and all that kind of jazz, right? I've seen that happen. Okay, write me up, have a ticket, and challenge it, and every single one wins. Because when you go back to the law, there's no law that's going to go. The law supersedes the tickets that they're going. But they don't care. They know that people don't want to go in. They know that people don't want to. Just like a speeding ticket. Most of the time, if you go and if you object to it, and if you challenge it, you'll either get it reduced or you'll get it dropped.
Right.
Same thing with these are like far-fetched. Like not even one has held through in court. All of them have been overturned. And so whether it's business, whether it's a ticket for whatever break, whatever you want to say, right? Mask this, mask that. So, so that being said, people just need to realize, like, we control. If we want to open our shop, we open our shop, right? And if I want to go to the shop, I'm going to go to the shop. If I don't, and if I'm worried about the people I'm surrounding myself with, I'm going to stay home,
Exactly.
and the thing is that, if, you kind of go back into human history and you look at certain things and you start understanding that the same way, and you hate to bring it up because it's such a horrific event, but the same way that the Nazis killed all the Jews, you sit there and you say, okay, how did 6 million people go along with this? Why were neighbors turning in neighbors? And what are we seeing right now?
It started with just the Star of David, and everyone says, oh, that's too extreme. And it's like,
yes.
What do you mean? It was just that in the beginning, so.
So, and then the sad part is you see people going along with it and they use the same thing. It's for your safety, right? And the way to control people is fear. I mean, it's an age-old tactic. Shoot, you use it as coaches, you use it in your daily life with my kids. Like, that's what you do, right? I mean, people go along and if they get fear, if they have any kind of fear-based, they're going to go along with what somebody else says, or they're going to comply. And that's where we're at right now. And if people are just, hate to say it, but just like wake up and look at human history throughout time, what has happened over and over and over again, we're going down that path again. And you'd hope that we all as a mass, that's what I'm thinking. Like I see there was some videos, they talked about like you can't have Thanksgiving now. They're shutting down Thanksgiving. You can't have more than 5 people in your house. So all this kind of jazz, right? And there was a big old, that was down in California, and there was a bunch of people and they had like a 10 p.m. curfew. And so what they do, they held a freaking big old parade at 10 p.m. And they like had trucks and they had cars and everybody was out in the streets and they had flags and they had everything going. And so I just think that first time you go through, nobody knew what was really going on. Everybody was like, okay, what is happening right now? This is something different. And then once the information starts to get going and you start saying, okay, well, they just start showing through, you start looking at some numbers, you start looking at, certain people speaking out, you're like, okay, well, have a better understanding of this. And now you're saying that the first time was to stop the spread and to limit the spread and to basically get your hospitals caught up with any kind of supplies, right? Well, all the PPE and all that kind of stuff, right? So we don't want to overrun the hospitals. So then you're like, okay, 15 days was turned into whatever, 200 and whatever days, right? And now the hospitals are caught up and it didn't work. And you put all these mask mandates on everybody. And now you're saying we're going to do it. Didn't work, but we're going to do it again for what reason? And it's like, it's just one of those things, I have a hard time going along with it all. I'm going to, do certain things where I've come with this whole thing is I've come to where it's like, okay, look, you take care of those that take care of you. That's the way I was raised in Hawaii. That's the way I was, you kind of brought up and have that foundation. So you know what? People in my inner circle, people who I care about, my family, my close friends, I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure we're all okay. And we're going to, hunker down and try to do what's best. And then if something were to pop off, something were to go off, then I'll be ready. So
exactly. No, I mean, what you described is literally like, we're handling this. I mean, right now it's like the definition of insanity. We're doing the same thing over with expecting a different result. And
Exactly.
I mean, you can go through, I have a hard time like wanting to quote CDC and WHO, and, you know, I hate it that I've had all this like free time that, you know, I've gone down the rabbit holes of the YouTubes and all those things, you know, but like CDC, the WHO, I mean, the WHO has now said that the last option for all countries should be lockdowns, you know, and then it's crazy. I literally, right before we logged on, I saw some tweet, and I don't know if this is true, but somebody tweeted like, you can right now get fined more in Oregon for having dinner with your family than you can for smoking crack. It's like,
they just made it legal here. Like, so I live right in the border of Washington, Oregon, right? So I'm in Vancouver area. So my office is down in Portland, so I go down there in the office and whatnot. And right now we're operating at, you know, we basically below 25%. So we have to go through this whole protocol to check in. And because we have office closed doors, we can go in, go to our office, close our door, work in our office. And if we need to have meetings, we can only have meetings of, you know, less than 5 people, all that jazz, whatever. So they have all these regulations and rules. But I say that in the sense of like, you can go over to Oregon and you can have meth on you, you can have crack on you, you can buy crack, you can do all that kind of stuff. And it's no repercussions. But if you have a straw, straws are banned. Okay, straws are banned. All right. And if you're together, more than 5 people in your home, you're gonna get a ticket. You're gonna go to jail. And the governor is sitting there pleading on everything, and to like, hey, turn your neighbors in and do all this kind of stuff. And you're sitting there going, okay, we're really going. And the sad part is, it's like, so I lived in Pullman for a while, small town. And what's happening in Seattle or what's happening in Portland is not the same thing that's happening like in Bend, Oregon, or Seattle, not the same thing happening in Pullman, right?
For sure.
I mean, it's completely different landscape, completely different numbers, completely different everything. How do you take care of it all? But they're just making a blanket rule across the state. And so one of the things for me was like the whole mask thing, when you can go into so many different areas in so many different doctors that will say it does nothing for you, right? Absolutely nothing. It hurts you more than it helps you, right? And so my question to those that are like driving around by themselves with a mask on, you know, or sitting at home with the mask on,
or walking in the forest with the mask on.
So what are you gonna do? Are you ever gonna take it off?
Yeah.
So when your master says it's okay to take it off, now you are gonna take it off? Is that where it goes?
Yeah.
Because who's your master? Is it the WHO? Is it CDC? Is it Fauci? Is it your governor? Is it who's your master in that sense, right? Like that's where you start going along a path of, what are we talking about, man? Like what are we talking about? So and here's the thing. If you want to go and do that, by all means, have at it.
It's a free country.
Just have at it. But don't be coming on me. Don't be saying stuff to me, coming at me, being like, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that. Like, oh, hold on. That's where you lose me in a lot of this stuff. So
for sure. And the big issue I have with it is, you know, I consider myself to be pretty hippie, pretty love everybody, want the best for everybody, you know, like caring about, obviously, like you said, like I care about myself first and foremost. I'm going to remain selfish no matter what, because if I don't, who else will, you know? And but there's now become this narrative that like, if you express these opinions that we are expressing right now, that it somehow makes us like insensitive or not care about people, or then even on top of it, like we want death or want, you know, something. And it's like, that's just where this, you know, divide has happened. And, you know, I laugh with some of the people that we need to be we need unity. We need to come together. And it's like, no, you want us to come together with what you say. Like people are disguising unity or disguising conformity as unity, you know? And that's where I get just like a little, just something goes off in my brain. Like what's happening right now?
Well, and I think the good thing about it is So very similar to you in a sense of, like I just said, like I was born and raised in a place to where family is everything, everybody around you is everything. You take care of other people, right? Like, you always make sure your fellow man is doing good. But to your sense, I think that, and not only myself, but a lot of people that I've think the same way I think, or have had similar experiences, have gone through that. They're having this same thing that we're having, right? We're like, hold on, this doesn't pass the smell test here. Something's off, and it's being exposed. And I truly do hope that people see that exposure of the whole thing, right? Because like my wife talks about it, and I talk about it with her, with certain family members, and how, you know, certain people think and how we handle certain situations and stuff. And I said, you know what, here's where I'm at in this whole thing, right? Fundamentally speaking, every single person throughout their existence has a different experience of growing up. Okay.
Right.
So because of that experience of growing up, and because of your life lessons and your ups and your downs, you're going to have a certain way of how you approach something or how you think about something. Okay. The way that I approach it is not going to be the same way you approach it. We may come to a similar or different conclusion, but we're going to approach it in a different manner because of our experiences. So right away, every single person should have that freedom of thought, of freedom of how to approach the situation, which is expected and should be completely fine, right? But what we're being told now is that you have to think like this or else. You have to think like that or else, or you're a racist, or you're a bigot, or you're a homophobic, or you're whatever term you want to throw out there, or you want people to die. You want, and the conforming part of that, and where this whole thing then goes, in my opinion, is the media.
Yep.
The media is the absolute, and I worked for the media for 15 years, bro. I mean, I was a part of that whole thing. Like I saw the whole system, saw the whole thing. Now I wasn't dove in as deep as I am now, but the whole reason, if you look at anything, the whole reason why people have that divide or have that division across the boards is because they believe in the media. They believe what the media is telling them. And so one of my things is like, look, number one, we're all going to have different experiences. So we're all going to have different ways of approaching things. Number two, I don't believe anything the media says. So if you do, then we're not gonna see eye to eye, which is okay. Yeah. You know, it's completely fine. But you can't go and impose. I'm not going to impose my will on you. You can't impose your will on me. So let's go along and live our lives. You know, I mean, and it's okay. We're not all supposed to be here doing the same thing, thinking the same way. I mean, how freaking boring is that?
Totally. My buddy yesterday said, you know, if we're all thinking the same thing, then we're not thinking. And that really, 100%. I hadn't heard. That was such a simple way of putting it. And I just like, we want different thought, whether it's wrong thought, you know, like sometimes you need the bad stuff in order to get the good stuff, you know, like if we're all just in that echo chamber. And I mean, like, I have a tough time. Seattle to me right now is like one of the biggest echo chamber, you know, LA, not as much, Seattle, especially right now, where it's just, and I feel bad for buddies. You know, I talk to friends that we have this very similar conversation that live in the heart of Seattle, and they're going really crazy, you know, because like they feel like the odd man out. And to your point of, if you don't believe in X, Y, and Z, then you're out. And then that takes us back to the evolutionary, like tribal ways of being in BC times, where if you got outed from the tribe, then you died because you needed all the homies, you needed you needed everybody. And so like, that's what's being played at, you know, in the media. I mean, you know, like we said, they know. We're like, there's a lot of money that goes into research and development and all these different things to get to the points where we're at. And it's scary. It's a little scary, but I think a positive is like the dumbest people are the loudest. And, you know, I think that's something. And so I'm like trying to get a little bit more of out there. And
Yeah.
most people I talk to and I've been now in Spain, where one of the hardest hit areas, now where I am in Czech Republic is per capita, one of the hardest hit areas, US, from West Coast, East Coast, whatever. A lot of people agree exactly what we're having, but are too scared to have this conversation too publicly because of what we just said.
Yeah, no, and I think that it's so funny because it's just like, oh gosh, I forget the exact quote, but you project onto others of what you're guilty of, right? And so that's what they're doing. They're like, hey, look, you're a fascist, but we're gonna practice fascism. You know what I mean? We want free choice, but you have to choose what we say, right? Like we're gonna dox you, we're gonna cancel you if you don't think or go follow along with the lines. But we're against fascism. Like, what are you smoking, man? Like, what are you talking about? And so, yeah, and so as you go along that path, it's so hard to buy into it because it's just all a hoax. I mean, the whole thing is just it's all fake. And so, like you're saying, the positive side of things, very similar over here. Like we live in the hard part for us, and I try to tell my wife, I mean, we're living in the heart of it, right? Like we're like your buddies over in Seattle. We're in the mix of it. Yeah. Our little town over here in Vancouver and Camas. I mean, we have probably a lot more like-minded thinking of the sense from us, and so I kind of keep it to myself, and I understand how to play the game, and whatnot. But at the same time, I'm gonna prepare myself. I'm gonna teach my kids the right way. I'm gonna understand like how that whole thing goes. I mean, how awesome is this? So my daughter in her class, I'm always asking like what they're teaching in school because I know the whole educational side is like So I have all of our kids are in Catholic private school. Okay, so and my daughter's 17. She's a junior in high school. Well, they have a question posed of if there were gun regulations implemented, would that help humanity or something to that frame, right? Like basically, hey, if we have gun regulation, is that going to help the human race? Is that going to help humanity? Is it going to help our country, right? And so I was like, oh, this is interesting. My ears kind of perked up. I was like, what's going on over there? And so I first asked her, I was like, what do you think? And she goes, well, if the good guys don't have guns, it's kind of like drugs. Even though it's illegal, they're all going to get them. And if the good guys don't have them, then the bad guys are just going to go and shoot them. And I'm sitting there going, I taught you well. Like my job as a dad is good. Like I'm doing all right, And so, but just along those conversations, I did appreciate this. Okay, so along as she's writing her paper, her teacher goes a little bit overboard, but I understand why. So the teacher asks, okay, cite your source and who's it from? And it's like, okay, it's from CNN or it's from Fox or it's from Forbes or it's from Wall Street, wherever it is, right? And then it says, who is the author? Are they a left-leaning or a right-leaning? Are they experienced or not? Do they have experience in this field or do they don't? Is it the first time they write an opinion or do they have a bunch of stats? And so she goes through to make them understand that, hey, look, understand who's saying things, Wow. And in the day, and I was like, okay, I appreciate that. And it's crazy that in the day of information, right? Like infinite information where you can get stuff wherever you want it. It's now turned into the day of disinformation, or in my terms, lying, right? Yeah. Because it's so easily accessible, like I said, the whole part of the media, in my opinion, is the biggest downfall of man right now. Like they are the evil of all evil because they know what they're doing. Okay. They know what they're doing and they're going to continue to go out there. And it's like, my role in this movie is to play X. My role in this movie is to play Y. And here's what I'm going to do. And whether they truly believe it because they have been, they've gone down the wrong rabbit hole. They believe in a certain side. Okay, that's fine. But at the same time, when it's all that way, then you're sitting there going, okay, something's wrong, right? Like the whole the whole FISA court thing, right? When they said, oh, there were 17 irregularities or 17 mistakes that were made. Like, okay, hold on. All right, so the mistakes that were made. When 17 mistakes all favor one side, those aren't mistakes. Like,
right.
let's be honest, right? So it's like the whole thing with the election right now. It's like, okay, when all the dead people vote for one person, it's not, you know, when all the ones that are supposedly false go for one side, it's not a glitch. You know, it's like a glitch balances things. You guys say, oh, this happens here and it happens. It's not an accident. Let's come on. Let's be honest and let's be real about this whole thing, right?
For sure.
And so that's where I go with the media. It's like, okay, well, if you're gonna be that way, or if you're gonna have your own opinion, which everybody should, but when it's all that way, all the time, then you're gonna sit there and be like, okay, this is I can't trust a word anybody says anymore. And that's where I go.
No, I'm with you. And that's really cool that your daughter's getting taught that right now in high school. Like, I ended up, a big reason I'm a non-believer in media for the most part is, like, I majored in communications in college, and luckily had one teacher that, I mean, like, literally brought up like some different court cases. There was some court case in like 2001 Fox News versus somebody that was reporting for some kind of like cattle thing. I'm going to butcher it. Essentially, they wanted them to do a study on it. The stuff they found on it wasn't what Monsanto wanted to be put out there. And so they said, no, you need to change the thing. And then they sued, and it went to Supreme Court. Ultimately, the ruling of the Supreme Court was like, media is legally allowed to lie, or legally knowingly allowed to lie. And that's now held up multiple different cases. And it's like you said, you can do one Google search of, I think it's Fox News versus, oh shoot, that's a weird last name. But, and you can read that, and then, you know, okay, well, the media is allowed to lie if they truly want to. And so, no, it's crazy. And like with the election stuff, I was talking with one of my homies last night, and, you know, there's just so much madness going on with it. And he brought up a good point too. And, you know, he would be a good guy in this conversation. He's like, you know, the one thing to consider though, he's like, for us to just think that any election ever in history has been 100% fair is
exactly
so naive, you know, like always there's someone with some stake, whether it's money, power, or whatever, that are going to be trying to get their way. And I think now, from like, he said he read some book on the 2000 election where the Republican, like, lawyers or whatever that got the Florida overturned 20 years later are like kind of bragging that like, we won it by like trying harder than the other side. Not exactly that the facts were right, but we just tried harder. And it's like, like we said, it's all out there. And so, you know, it's fun now for me being distant from the game, you know, like sometimes it's really hard. It sounds like you're able to see it, but a lot of people, when you're in the picture, you can't really see what's actually happening. You know, you need to step outside of the frame in order to actually see the picture. And so like, or like when you're in the game, you know, when you're playing, I can only see the one side I'm looking at, but if I'm up in the nosebleeds, I can see, man, that fucker just missed the read, you know, like that guy was wide open. And so like, it's fun now for me being at this kind of distance where like, I try to remain neutral. You know, I don't think Trump was Hitler, and I don't think he's the next savior to us at all. You know, like it just, he's a guy, and the same kind of thing where just the middle now has become almost extreme, you know, because the outsides are so extreme. Now the middle is like, oh, you don't believe he either is the worst or the best? You're crazy. And it's like, no, that I think that should be normal, you know?
Or you're a conspiracy guy, or you're this, or they have this and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, okay, hold on. So I will say this. So to a couple of your points, when you talked about the Monsanto one and the media, right? So go back and look, and Obama passed it. I can't remember exactly what year it was, but Obama passed an executive order that overturned something from like 67 years or something like that of existence to allow media to spread propaganda.
Exactly.
And so that was, so that's where the whole reason for that. And then you have, so like where I go and everything is why, like what's the reasoning behind something? And the same thing with like, you know, you can go into the whole 9/11 stuff and the Patriot Act and how that whole thing took place, and you can ask yourself, okay, they need a reason why, right?
Yes.
So if you do this, they need a reason why to widen the gap right now between them, the elites, middle class, and everybody else to get up there. So how are we going to do that? Well, let's shut down a bunch of big businesses. How are we going to shut down a bunch of businesses? How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to have a lockdown. They're not going to be able to survive. The gap's going to widen, and we're going to continue to push and go across that board. And so you can look at all different angles of everything, but that fear tactic is everything, right? And during that time, I want to say it was because of what was taken over, across over in the Middle East. I think that he had some kind of reasoning of, hey, look, our media needs to be able to not to be completely down one side of things and tell the facts. We have to be able to lie about something in order to be able to help our country out, whatever it is, right? So as you look at things, you're like, bullshit.
Yes.
Like, that's bullshit, and that's bullshit, and you created this whole thing. And to your point of the elections and being anybody that has, you know, if we never think that anything has ever taken place for how many years, it's complete asinine, right? And so that's where I would say, as far as where I appreciate Trump in a sense, is that when's the last time you've seen so much American pride?
Yes.
Like, when's the last time you've seen so many people out there and they're out there waving their flag and they want their country to remain strong. They want their freedoms. They're being exposed to all these things, right? So I appreciate him. Nobody talked about fake news prior to him taking over. Not one person, right?
No.
So I appreciate the things that he has done in that sense, because dude's what, 72 years old?
Yeah.
He could be, I mean, a lot of money, more than well taken care of. He didn't have to put his family across this whole board. He didn't go and have to take a bunch of shots and have all these things going across and everything. But so I appreciate what he's done in that sense. You know what I mean? As well as opening people's eyes into a bunch of other areas. And then one of the other things that we're talking about, like being down the middle and stuff, and if you don't believe this, you don't believe that. So my son, he's a 7th grader, he's 13, and in his school, it was just they're starting to go in. They go in like a couple days a week. You know, they do most everything online, and they go in a couple days a week. And apparently, one of the kids, they were talking about the election and all that kind of stuff, and one of the kids asked the teacher, he's like, "Hey, so who did you vote for?" And the teacher was like, "Why does it matter?" Teacher goes, "You know me, who I am right now, right? You've known me for a couple of years, correct? You know how I work. You know how I care about people. You know how I care about you. If I tell you who I voted for, automatically you're going to have some kind of stigma against me, either with me or against me. And what sense does that make?
Right.
What does me, whoever I voted for, give you? Like, just because I voted for one person, now you're gonna, all those years that I've known you or you've known me, or all these experiences we've had, you're now going to drive a wedge into that, or you're going to go and be like, oh, that's right, that's why I liked him even more, which makes zero sense. And I was like, yes. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, I appreciate that. You know, same thing like happened to freaking Drew Brees, right? Like when Drew Brees and that whole thing came out, what are you talking about? Yeah. This guy's been more involved in helping people and doing the right things his entire life. You've known him for how long? And because he's going to sit there and say, I don't want to kneel for the national anthem because of my father and my grandfather and the wars they fought in and what I believe, you're going to go and dox the guy and cancel him? Yeah. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
man?
And just smear his name through the mud.
It's unreal. It is unreal. And so it's just that, like you're saying, the side of everything, it's, they want to draw that line, and it's either you're here or you're there. And the sad part about it is that line is now widening. Mm-hmm. So if you play in the middle, like you're talking about, you get looked at like you're crazy. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, you got to believe all these things or all these things. Well, can I believe in like 2 of those things over there and like 5 of these things over here and maybe be in the middle about this? No, you can't. You're either with us or you're against us. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like how does, it's unreal, man.
It's we're turning it into, it's become the new sports, you know, with, and that was almost like a plan in itself too. No sports are allowed. And so here, get on the red team or the blue team,
yeah,
and
yeah.
and let's go cheering, you know, and
The modern day Bloods and Crips, right?
dude,
Like, what the hell?
seriously, yeah, the Republicans and the Democrips, you know, it's
Crazy.
insane. And the other thing was like, with whether people, you know, and the Trump derangement syndrome that people talk about, like it's a real thing. And like I just, if with any common sense, to me, as we've talked about with the media, is literally like everyone in the media is against the guy, and you know, even Fox News. And so when it becomes so one-sided, like,
Mhm.
and knowing what we know about the media and how the games play, like it just, another thing goes off in your mind of like, okay, so there's not one person, I mean, I guess Tucker Carlson, but you know, like, but there's not
Yeah.
one person who is saying something different. Like that makes me, you know, back to the saying of, if we're all thinking the same thing, we're not thinking. And so
Yeah.
that just like makes it go off in my mind. And you know, through my travels, like for the most part, it's been ironic to hear and see people that, whether Europeans, Africans, Asians, that I've talked with, that seem to truly try and dive into American politics, because it's people are interested in it, you know, worldwide. And
Well,
for the most part,
it affects the world. That's the thing. It's because it affects the world. Like,
it does.
we're the last freestanding country, true. I mean, in that sense, and what we do here truly has a ripple effect across the entire globe. And that's why, I mean, it's because it's either going to help them or hurt them. You know,
Yeah.
they want to have their freedoms. They want to use us as an example for freedoms and whatnot. And so, it's interesting to hear what you say, because I was going to ask you about that with all your travels, because I haven't experienced very much and gone out there, and you know, I talk to different people, but like you're saying, you go across all boards. It's interesting to see how, you know, how involved or how interested they are in
Yeah, and most people that are, I would say, have done a little bit of research, like the amount of like random, and I don't know a ton, but I've been shocked at it, whether African, Asian, or European dudes that like Trump, is crazy to me, you know. But there's also the flip side of, you know, people that just will only watch whatever's shown on their local media, and normally they get the most clickbaity stuff of walking down the ramp or, you know, whatever. And
yeah.
you know, and then back to the point of like, you know, we were grown up with, you know, I'm a little younger, but like I know the entire thing throughout life has always been like, the two things you don't talk about is religion and politics. And you know, that I view it now, I view it as a good and bad thing, because it's a bad thing because since we've been conditioned that way for however long, we don't really know how to actually talk about it and have a conversation with it. But then I look back at a good thing of it, because back in, I don't know, 2000 maybe, or even before Trump, like if people didn't talk about it, at least like you said, the thing with the teacher is now you can't judge me and make this assumption on it. And so like I have this weird thing of like, okay, we either need to like learn how to talk about it and like let's come together, or let's just stop let's go back to the way it was, where we don't judge each other on it. And I don't know, you know, that's just something that's came up with my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think along those lines, it's just like anything in life, right? It's the balance, right? It's like you got to have balance in whatever you're doing. And I go back to the two fundamental things, because of what I said earlier, experiences and media, right? And so if, for instance, you know, family or my wife's side, her sister and brother-in-law and whatnot think a certain way, and we haven't really seen eye to eye on some things, and so we've gone through and we've had, you know, discussions and gone back and forth, and it didn't matter. You know, at first I was like, hey, look, man, your experiences and your family, you know, you have different things from me. Like his family came up from Argentina, mom and dad, been over here. He was born and raised here, yada, 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 but he still has family back there. So he has different thoughts and experiences. Same with me. I was born and raised in Hawaii. I came up here, you know. So we're going to have fundamentally different views. Where we started, and that was fine and good. Where we started to really kind of go across and even widen even more was when I talked to him about something, and then I'd send him like an independent article about it, and he's like, no, that's not true. That's not in CNN, or it's not on MSNBC or whatever. That's not somebody that's valid. I'm like, okay, well, and he sent me something on or NBC or something. I'm like, that's BS. I know that's a lie, you know? And so I'm like, okay, well, we're never gonna see eye to eye. We're never gonna see anything, because at a fundamental base, I don't believe a word the media says, and you believe everything the MSM says, like all of mainstream media. And so regardless of what I try to show you or you try to show me to validate your point or my point, it's never gonna go across the board. And so I truly do think that in people in their own times, like, so for instance, they live over in Portland, right? They're all about socialism. They're all about, you know, all this kind of stuff, which to me is crazy, because he's from Argentina. He sees how that has hurt his people, you know what I mean? How that has hurt. But now, but we have more money here. It can work in the United States, even though it hasn't worked throughout its time in history. Like I get it, right? And so anyway, so they have a daughter, and the daughter is she's like in pre-K, she's like in daycare, and so they just passed a new law, and all of a sudden now they're not only paying for their daughter to go to that daycare, they have to pay for the people's kids to go to daycare. Okay. So they're paying on top of everything. And so she calls my wife and she's pissed. She's like, "Oh, BS is this? I gotta go, and why am I gonna pay for?" And my wife's like, "Hello, this is what socialism is. This is what why you voted the way you voted, because you want to help everybody out. It's because you want to go." She's like, "Well, yeah, I don't mind doing that, but it's just like I would like to just, you know, decide like if I want to or not, or, you know, if I want to help them, then great. If I don't," and you're like, what do you smoke? This is the whole premise of what you were going for this whole time. Like, what? And
I don't mind the idea of socialism, and I don't mind the idea of paying for everybody else, as long as it's the idea of it, you know?
Yeah, exactly. But to my wife's point, she's like, "Hey, look, everybody has to go through their own experiences in order to have their own revelations, right? Or to have their own train of thought. And so whether it be a good one or a bad one, whether it be going through a friend or whatnot, like her mom is somewhat liberal in a sense, and she lives over in Portland as well too. Well, she's like a CSI person. So she goes around, takes all the pictures for the cops, for all the crime scenes and everything in that sense. And so with the whole Antifa stuff, and with all the way that the media has been treating the cops and how all stuff's going, those are all her friends, right? That's her colleagues. Yeah. And so all of a sudden she's sitting there going, hold on. Like in her brain, she's like, this doesn't make sense. Like what they're saying is not matching up with what's actually happening. What's happening is not really being portrayed in the right, like what they're going across the whole board. And so she's starting to awaken herself and like, something's off here. And so people have to go through their own experiences to be able to understand what goes on. Otherwise, they're going to live through the TV. They're going to live through a celebrity or athlete or a person on the news, which makes zero sense, because none of those people equate to anything that we go through. And so, but they're going to believe in that's the way we've been conditioned. That's the way we've been programmed for how many years, you know? So, but I will say this. So you kind of mentioned earlier, just about people going across and we were talking about conspiracy theories earlier and the government and all that kind of stuff and lies and all that kind of stuff.
And
right?
I'm a
So
conspiracy
there's this
guy,
one comedian.
as now I call it, I'm an alternate guy. I'm an alternate fact guy.
I'm a truth seeker. I'm a truth seeker.
Exactly.
I seek for the truth. So there's this one comedian. He was like, he goes, he was talking about conspiracies, right? And he goes, okay, so you can tell me you don't believe in one conspiracy? That's kind of like you. So you're telling me not just all of them are like you don't believe in just one? And so he goes whole path. He's like, so you just think the government's batting 1,000? That everything they've always told you is 100% true, right? And he goes, I know this. He goes, I have one son, and I'm in charge of one son. The government is in charge of millions of people, okay? I am in charge of one son, and I lie to that little motherfucker all the time. And he goes, and so, I mean, it's a comedy show, but to a valid point, you're sitting there going, you don't believe, so if you're going to sit there and say, this conspiracy, that's conspiracy, this, but only this goes on this side, and like, you try to go and make it your way, you're going to believe in every single thing that the government's ever told you, that like, just like back to the election, you're going to believe that every single election has been on the up and up, and that everything has always been true. Like, okay.
I'm almost, in a way, I'm like envious of those people, like I'm not, but at the same time, it's like, man, that almost has to be kind of nice in a way. Like, like it's kind of, it would save me a lot of YouTube rabbit hole time. That's for sure. But like, it's just, no, I can't fully like wrap my head around it at times, but then at other times I understand that people are fearful. We use the death gets used so much with all of that. And I was talking with a buddy yesterday on this pod, and I said, not to sound tough or anything, but I don't have a lot of like fears, I guess, in life. Like I don't necessarily fear dying or spiders or whatever. The one thing I truly do fear, though, is just like not getting to live my life at the highest, at the way I want to live it. Like I've always said, I'm fearful of just having what I deem like a normal life, and whatever that means. I kind of have my own meaning of it built into my mind, but that's my fear. And so I get that some people's fear might be dying, or their fear might be their parents dying, or whatever. And so the position I take, like you said, we all build our ideas based on our growing up and experiences. And so if that's my fear of not being able to live the way I want to live, I'm going to react this way to being told how to live, in a certain way. And the major difference out here in Czech Republic, compared to back home, where people here, like, I mean, also Eastern European, they tend to be a little bit more rule followers than, the American culture is kind of built on not following rules and being, I mean, we built the country on, we don't like this, we're out of here, and so like, that's what we were built on. But over here, people are a little more relaxed, follow the rules. No one, I don't think here truly thinks it's that big of a deal, but also they're not protesting too much, because my buddy who works at the restaurant is getting 100% of his salary paid for not working for the last 2 months or whatever, not just one time stimulus check. And so it's like, there's difference. And then I'm moving to Finland in about a week to go play over there for 2021. And they give free tests in the airport as you arrive, if you arrive from somewhere foreign. And talking with the coach there, and he's like, it's a lot cheaper to just give everyone free tests than shut everything down, And I was like, I know, I agree. I agree. I'm with you. That's why I'm going to the darkest place in the world, but at the same time, I'm going to be able to go to a gym. So I'm stoked,
Yeah, exactly.
But
how has the playing been for you?
Dude, it's been fun. It's been,
what year is it for you now?
This will be my first year out in Europe was 2015. And so I played 2 seasons in Portugal. which was like they'd only been having a league for like 7 years, and so it was still like brand new. But relatively speaking, for how new it was, there's just not a lot of O-line, D-line out there, but skill position wise, it's kind of like glorified 7-on-7 with a couple big guys in front, or fat, shorter, fatter guys in front of you, slower guys, I guess. And it was fun. That was probably my most fun time I've had. I was living in Lisbon. It's my favorite city now. And then I played 2 seasons in Poland. I've played 2 seasons in 1 year a couple times now. And so Poland was a little bit a better competition. I was supposed to be in Finland for 2019. Didn't work out with the American head coach that we had. We didn't vibe too well. And then played in Spain. This year played in Spain and Czech Republic. And man, it's fun. It's interesting because like it's kind of semi-pro, so only the imports are getting paid. A lot of the local guys, I would compare, like, we all have a homie that is really, really, really into their softball team, and like takes batting practice, and, they meet up for practices, and when they lose, they're pissed. And when they win, they're posting their pictures on Facebook. And so that's the best way I could compare it, of like how serious guys take it. But with that said, like, it's pretty good ball, like, given the fact that 95% of the guys on the field are doing it as a hobby, and football's a tough sport to do just as a hobby, because I mean, a lot goes into it. But that also like makes it cool, because like these guys, they fucking love it. They want to be there, like they got a wife and a kid. They just worked 8 hours and then they're showing up to practice. Like there's a desire to be there. But it's also tough for me. I've been QBOC the entire time out here. So I get to do both things I love. I'm coaching running backs, receivers. I don't have other quarterbacks to coach. I've had to up my O-line coaching game, and and so it's fun in that sense. But like,
how much longer can the body hold up, man?
Yeah, I mean, dude, I feel better. Honestly, I feel better now at 20 than I did, or I feel better now at 30 than I did at 20, because I've gone away from trying to lift as much weight as possible every time I'm in the gym. I do a little hip mobility 20-minute kind of thing to start my warm-ups. Like my hips are better, core, like I've narrowed it down to, I don't need big biceps. I don't need to bench press 225 a few, like I know what I need. And then also being OC, I know I'm going to out scout and I'm going to out prepare the other team. And so I can get my guys ready, so if for the most part, schemes are simple. And so I know if this guy's over here, they're coming with the blitz on this play, and so I can teach that to my guys. And so this year here in Czech, I think I got sacked once, like there are a couple games where I didn't touch the ground, bro, like almost awesome. Like it's fucking great, dude. And almost you feel bad at the end of it sometimes, because it's like, I should be a little bit sore after a game, like I feel like I just practiced, but I'm not going to complain. And Finland's going to be Finland's a much better. The best leagues over here are in Germany and Austria, and then Finland. I guess Finland could compete with a lot of the German, Austrian teams, but actually Finland, it's kind of those three are the top threes, and so it'll be back to a little bit more competitiveness. Like this year here in Czech Republic, we smacked everybody. We had a really good defense, and so I mean, we had to score 14 points, and it was like, okay, we'll win, but we averaged like 40. So it was fun, and no, I've enjoyed it. It's been like, I think I got another 5 years in me or so, 10, like I see Brady still doing it. So I'm not getting hit by Javon Curse, bro. So I think I can do it,
So they like take care of like all your housing and everything for you too, right?
Yeah, it's
As you,
for
yeah,
traveling or for living abroad, it's like the most smooth process ever because I show up, I got an apartment, you know, depending on
yeah,
what you negotiate, um, cell phone plan, you know,
yeah.
insurance, gym, you just kind of show up and then live, you know, you don't have to
Awesome.
worry about finding anything, paying bills, you know, anything like that. So it's easy.
And then are you able to stay over there when the season's done? Like when the season's over, are you supposed to come back, or are they allowed to keep you over there? How's that work?
It differs by the team, or like technically, I've now I actually have my Irish citizenship. My grandfather was born in
Nice.
Ireland, and so now I'm technically European, so I don't have to worry about like visas and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
And so
Yeah.
that also makes me way more valuable because in some leagues I'm technically not an import. I'm just European.
Oh,
And
I
so
see.
like
Yeah.
in Finland, you're allowed 3 Americans on the team, but only 2 on the field at the same time, but
Okay.
unlimited Europeans. And so
Gotcha.
I'm technically a Euro at the
Okay.
position that is everyone gets an American at. And so
Yeah.
it makes it real valuable in that sense. And so to answer your question though, now that I got the citizenship, I've kind of made it my goal to stay over here. Before I
Okay.
always kind of had to come back to like reset the visa or reset the passport or whatever. But
Yeah.
now my idea is I'm trying to live in Europe and then only visit the US when I come back. And this team
Okay.
I'm going to now, our season doesn't start till May, and I'm going there December 1. And they're going to
So
pay
you
me
get like
for the
you
off
doing like
season.
so. So are you doing other jobs, or are you like? I mean, what else are you doing the off season wise?
Well, I mean, we'll have this team I'm going to in Finland. They won the championship last year. They're one of the like, from what I hear around Europe, they're one of the better programs like for
Okay.
practice and like professionalism and you know working, which I'm really excited about because sometimes here in Czech we were lucky to get 15 guys at a practice, you know, and so it could be challenging at times. And so for the most part though, I haven't done anything, you know, I've just been playing,
Yeah.
coaching. You'll coach a
Okay.
youth team or a flag team, which I really
Yeah.
love doing also. And
Yeah. Last.
this
Yeah.
this year in Czech, I was getting paid to basically just have conversations with people in English, you know, who wanted to talk with a native speaker. And so had only like three little hour meetings per week and make a couple extra bucks, you know, per week, and that stacks up over time. And I didn't need it, but
Yeah.
I took it, you know, and so that was fun.
Yeah.
And I literally looked at it like I'm practicing podcasting when I'm talking to these
Yeah.
people, you know, like it's a fun thing. And so I I love it. You know, some people, you got to be pretty damn independent because I would compare it like a junior college kind of vibe where like
Yeah.
if 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 you want to stay home and not go to the gym, no one's going to be on your ass and tell you
Yeah.
you need to be
Exactly.
here.
Yeah.
You know, like you got to be pretty self-motivated, and coupled with you're in a country where most likely you don't speak the language, and maybe they don't, depending where you are, they don't speak great English. And so there's that. It's fun for me. It's a game, you know, like I like
Yeah.
learning the new languages and trying and getting in and talking, but it's not for everybody for sure, you know.
Yeah, it's all an experience, man. That's a really cool experience to go through all that stuff. And I was asking about the off season stuff because playing up, Canada wise and arena ball wise, for me, we always had that off season. And so what was I going to do in the off season, right? So there were guys up in Canada that stayed up there. They worked up there. They had made some deals with some businesses that were up there that they were going to do some celebrity stuff with, or however you want to look at it.
Yeah.
And arena ball wise is very similar to what you're saying. Is I came back home and I coach high school ball. I do my camps. I do broadcasting. I do all that kind of stuff in that sense. And then I go bounce back down. So I'm trying to, I was trying to like, hey, get paid for this 6 months and get paid for this 6 months and kind of go all the way across. And so that's cool, man. I mean, because the one thing before I got into coaching, one of the things that Coach Price, who coached me, told me, he was like, play as long as you can. Just enjoy it. Like enjoy the ride, because once it's over, it's over. It's just like that. You know, Moneyball is one of my favorite movies, and I was just watching it actually the other day on a flight. And when he's recruiting, you know, Billy Bean, and they're going through the flashbacks, and he's like, "Hey, look, you got to take this as your life's first career, right?" And we're all told one day, whether it's 18 or 40, we're all told that we can no longer play the kids' game, right? Like, we don't know when it's going to be, but at one point we're all told. And so to that point, it's like, do it as long as you can, man, because you'll sit back. I mean, it's I've gotten past the whole thing. I've moved on. I've understood my journey in my life and where I'm going, and the sections that I've had, the chapters that I've had. And my wife, you know, we're sitting here watching guys now, and watching guys like Baker and Kyler Murray and Drew Brees and all these guys that are, you know, 6 foot and 6'1" and all across the board. And my wife said, "They're going, man, you missed your time. Like, you completely missed your time." and that's just the way it works. That's the way God had it. I mean, shoot, back then, man, I was like the smallest guy across all boards. Yeah, 6'1".
Yeah.
And you got Russell out here at 5'10". You got Kyler out here at 5'10", just slinging it and being able to play. And I love that they've broken through that whole barrier. And before, it was, unless you were Michael Vick, there's no way you're going to play at 6 foot 6'1", right? You had to be Michael Vick. And now it's like, hey, look, if you can sling it, you can sling it. You can play. And the offenses have changed so much, and it's opened up so much. And but to my point, my wife's like, I think she gets a little bitter, because she's like, I was supposed to be like this, the NFL wife, and not have to work at all, you know. And I'm like, trick was on you. You got played on that one.
Yeah.
So,
no, that's what I was gonna ask. I mean, because dude, I've meant to tell you, it's like, dude, you were like the fucking inspiration for me when I was coming up in high school, you know, at the camps and stuff with you, but also seeing, like, you know, the little guy can do, like, you were there, you know, like, even though it wasn't the same as a Baker or whatever, but like, you still were there. And like, that's so fucking cool to me, because it was almost impossible, you know, like it really was almost, because if you weren't the 6'2" minimum, 6'3", or running a 4.3, then it just wasn't going to happen. And
no chance. Yeah.
It was always so I thought the exact same thing, because when, you know, I left college, like, I didn't even try. And I'm not saying that I would have done it, you know, like, I came out of DT, like, it was kind of like, all right, if Gesser can't make it, like, at the all-time Wazzu guy, like, you know, then me coming from New Haven, I think I got some realism, you know, like, maybe it's time to look in another direction. Maybe I'll go try my hand in Europe, you know. I look at it now, like you said, it's like, damn, if I was going into college now,
oh man,
I would, because I think from day one going into college, I tried to maybe lie to myself and say, like, yeah, I want to play in the NFL, but I knew it was unrealistic, you know, and I probably crippled myself. And like I said, I'm not sitting here saying it would have happened if I had the right mindset, but if I was seeing the influence now on the game, like, I know I would have a different mindset going towards it. And it's crazy. And the same thing with, like, the tight end position. My homie that I played with in Portugal, he was practice squad tight end in Tampa Bay for like 2 years. He played at Iowa. He won whatever the best tight end in the country award is, you know, but he was a receiving tight end. He's 6'6", 240, 245, could run, you know, 4.6, could jump. I mean, he's what everybody wants right now. And
like a big receiver. Yeah, exactly.
Dude, and you know, I mean, I'm glad that his path took him and we met up. He's my best friend now, and we threw like 50 touchdowns in 2 years together. But I told him, I was like, dude, like, if you were coming into the NFL right now, like, you'd be the guy, because he was always trying to make it as the third tight end that was a blocking guy that only came in to block. And now it's like, dude, the position, your position is the one everybody wants. And
One of the,
he says the same thing your wife says.
Oh yeah, exactly. And the thing is, it's funny because I remember going back to my rookie year, and Neil O'Donnell was, so it was Steve McNair, Neil O'Donnell, myself,
right.
and Billy.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about this. Good.
Yeah, and so Neil, we're sitting around talking and stuff, and Neil's sitting there going like, "Hey, listen, guys," he's like, "Timing is everything, not just in the NFL, but in life." He goes, "There are guys." He goes, "I've been here for a long time. I've been playing." I think he was on his 14th year, I want to say, at that time, or some, whatever it was, 12, 14. He was somewhere around that range, right? And so he goes, "There are a lot of guys here that shouldn't be here. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of guys that aren't here that should." It was just a timing of where they were at in their career. It was a timing of, hey, not even just of what the league is like, of what that team needed. And then the opportunity to get to somebody else on another team, and then being able to have that flexibility, or be able to have the time frame or whatever it may be.
And the so coaching staff and the
exactly, or your philosophies or any of that stuff. And it's so, I mean, he goes, it's like hitting the lottery. I mean, yes, you have to prepare, you got to train, you got to be able to perform when your number is called. That's no doubt, that's what anything is in life, right? But you also have to try to create that opportunity. And a lot of the guys, they do everything they possibly can, but the opportunity is never created. And so it's hard, right? And so he taught me that early on, and I never really thought about that until you kind of take your experiences through life. And right now, it's like, that's how everything goes, man. Like that's how everything in life goes. And I think the people, you always ask somebody, like, what do you, just like you're saying earlier, like, what do you truly, like, your experience of what you want to do with your life, right? Like, how do you want to push your life? My biggest fear is to not be able to live the way I want to live, right? Like you're saying, everybody has their own happiness. Everybody has their own way and their path of looking at things, or where what they feel is like going to be the best, right? And I feel like through timing of everything and your experiences, that's going to switch and change. And the people who are the happiest are the people who can understand that within themselves, right? If they can understand that within themselves, and they stop going out there and stop putting, guys like yourself and myself on a pedestal when we're back in our prime, and you're still in your prime. But for me, like, putting that, but like, yes, use that as inspiration, but just because I said something doesn't mean that is the truth, right? Or just because, this guy is on a movie that whatever he says is valid. Or just because somebody posted something on Instagram that they're on a vacation, like a while back, my wife was looking at somebody and they're on a vacation in Hawaii, and she's like, "Oh, freaking hate them. They always go and do this stuff, whatever." I'm sitting there going, why don't you be happy for them? She's like, "Well, I am, but it's like, you know what I mean? I don't mean I hate them, but that's just where we go, right? Because we go this comparison, and then all of a sudden we want what they have. And you're sitting going, no, that's not. Everybody's going to have their own things in life, but you got to find your own joy in what you're doing. And until you can do that, you're never going to truly be happy and go along that path, and stop looking outwards and look inwards. You know what I mean? Like that's where I think a lot of people fail in that sense. And the social media aspect and the media and all that stuff, like I said, I truly do think this is the biggest thing that's taken control of who we are and how we perceive each other and how we live our lives. And I envy you in a sense that you're able to do what you're doing right now and have a freaking ton of time and fun doing it, and having the experiences that you're having, and be able to go across that whole board. Because I think a lot of guys out there, we're too fucking scared to do what you're doing. You know what I mean? Like, they'd be too scared to sit there and be like, well, hold on, I'm gonna go over there and play, and I don't even know what the circumstance is gonna be, and I gotta call play, I gotta do all. They'd be too scared to do it. So I envy you in a sense, and praise you in a sense of, you're going out there and you're loving it, and you're living it, and you're loving the experiences, you're loving the challenges of trying to figure out, I can't speak to this person over here, but I'm gonna try to figure the whole scenario out. I don't know what I'm doing in the off season. I don't even know. I gotta be locked down. I got cops outside my door. I mean, this whole experience is crazy. but you're like, this is life, man. Like
Right.
I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna enjoy it. So I appreciate you in that sense of how you approach that, because I think if more people would do that and approach that in a true happiness kind of stage, then our world would end up being a better place in that sense. You know what I mean? And people would end up being more happy and more excited about each other of what that person's successes are. You know, it's like we're not against each other in the world. I want to root for your success and you want to root for my success. We're all going to root for each other's success. It's not like, oh, that person is more successful. Screw that person. I got to knock them down now. That's what this whole thing has come about. It's like, if somebody's higher, they want to go and knock them down to where they're at. Like, no.
No.
Like, no, how about you? Let me help you build to where I'm at. Let's go and do this together. You know, like let's all go there. But it's reverse. It's like,
Yeah,
hey,
like
you're here.
my win doesn't mean your loss, you know?
Exactly.
No, sorry, I jumped in on you.
No, so I need to be clear with it. But I think that's kind of where, you know, when you hit me up to do the podcast, I was like, oh, it's gonna be fun, because I wanted to hear your side of things and how that whole experience has gone. Because I had a buddy that, you remember Sheldon, right?
Yeah.
Sheldon Cross.
Yeah.
He let me do my camp stuff. He's coaching over at Kennedy Catholic now, and he played overseas for a little bit. And so he talked to me about, you know, some of the stuff over there. And so you have some kind of a understanding of it all. And I've had other guys when either playing in the NFL or AFL that played overseas or tried to go back and forth and do that kind of the back and forth game and all that kind of stuff. And you just never really knew what it was because you never went and did it, you know?
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I probably would have done it if I didn't have kids early on in my life as well too, you know?
For sure.
But everybody has that path. Everybody has where God's pushing them and guiding them towards this whole thing. And you gotta just have faith and enjoy, you know? So
no doubt. And I appreciate you saying that. And like, that's the funny thing I'll explain to people, you know, is you know, you look at, like we said, the Instagram culture and you'll see, okay, this country 1 year in this country or traveling this and that, but then there's a sacrifice to pay with it, because I'm not making much money or anything, you know, I'm enjoying it. Actually, as I'm getting into it now, I'm getting some contracts where I'm able to save up a little bit. And so by the time I finish an off season, I can either just use that money to travel, or I could be stationary somewhere and pay rent, you know, and survive for a few months. But first couple off seasons, I go back home to Issaquah and deliver some pizza, you know, like live with my mom and deliver some pizza. And like, so I used to always joke is like, depending on what time of year you catch me, you either think I'm a fucking loser or I have the coolest life in the world, you know, like either you're delivering pizza at 28 living with your mom, or you're living in Barcelona getting paid to play a kids game, you know. It's like but it's just part of the thing, you know. And
no doubt.
so it's been funny to say that to people, of like, you know, and that's where like the whole living for a living thing started, was being back home and someone asking you, oh, what do you do for a living? And I'd be like, I play American football in Europe. And that just kind of got a tiresome, you know, repeating the same thing to someone who really doesn't want to hear it. And so I just finally would tell people, man, I'm just living for a living. That's what I'm doing, you know. And the looks it got, kind of like, I enjoy getting that weird look. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to stick with that. And so it's cool. But so to stay on this kind of thing with, you know, you said you're done, you kind of got the ball out of your mind with, you know, I'm sure it's still in there at times, but like
always gonna be in there,
always. But like, what's now your like, what's that next career in your mind? What's the thing that makes you happy? The new passion for you? Because like you've done everything. You've announced, you've coached, you know, whether it's quarterbacks, OC, interim head coach, athletic director. I mean, you've done like all of the roles. So, I mean, what's you've tasted, what's the next thing for you?
Yeah. So to give you, I've kind of gone along the path of where you'll know that your network is everything, right? So your network based, so you build up the friendships, the relationships you build. That's always going to lead you to what's next or what's going on. And so I was fortunate enough when I went through my time at Washington State as an associate athletic director for about 5 years. The network base that I built up there was all the big money donors, right? So all these big money donors, for the most part, they're all business owners, and they've all done very well in their lives. And so building up that network base has helped me out. I got introduced to a guy by the name of Chris Prentice, who's over in Seattle, and he started a company called Adibus, and Adibus was a data analytics company, to where they're looking at how, like, basically he's a big rugby guy. Him and Pete Carroll kind of got together. They started talking about rugby and how you can implement it into football. And so it was this whole system that got brought up, 7-8 years ago, and they perfected the system. They put all kinds of data analytics to it. They put a whole algorithms and everything to it, long story short, but they're changing the way the game is being played from a tackling standpoint, and implementing like what rugby is compared to football, right? Okay. And it's head behind, like lead shoulder, all kinds of stuff in that sense. And so not to go in the weeds on that, but I got introduced to him. He brought me in as an independent contractor, basically as a business consultant, to help out find investors. So he wanted me to go and use my network base to get investors. And then he was like, oh, you actually have a lot of good, connects across college football and NFL as well too. What do you think about helping us to get clients? So I'd go out there and introduce them. We got Baylor, we got Oklahoma. I just came back. And then the company got bought by a larger company out of Chicago. Same thing, basically different role, or it's the same role, different company. But we were out in went out to the Senior Bowl, was out at the NFL Combine this last February to do the whole thing. We were meeting with NFL teams, getting in the door, kind of presenting what we're doing. And then the whole pandemic hit, right? Okay. And literally as that pandemic hit, Chris and I were sitting down talking. We were going to an investor dinner, and his main role, where he started with his family, was insurance. Okay. And so he basically said, hey, have you ever thought about insurance? And I'm sitting there going, no, nothing about it. Don't even care about it, any of that sense, right? He goes, well, he's like the CEO of the Northwest of a company called USI. And so I knew some of the guys that worked within it, understood somewhat about it, but I did some research, kind of looked more into it. And more than anything else, I kind of looked more into myself, right? And so I'm sitting there going, okay, just like you're saying, what's your next lead? What's your passion? Where are you going? What's going on? And so I started going back and started to understand that I really loved the service side of things. Mm-hmm. I loved trying to help figure something out. I love trying to solve a problem, whether it be how to attack this defense. I love coaching little kids teams to where, hey, look, let's have fun. Let's go and win this game. I love, creating like this, all those things of, hey, when donors will come in, I love setting the whole thing up for them, where athletes would come back. I create this whole atmosphere, for whether it was fishing trips to golf tournaments to, events at Washington State, all these types of things. I just love that service aspect. And so when I started looking more into that, I started to figure out I like helping people. I like that aspect of it. And so when I looked more into the company and how they approach things, they come from a holistic approach and have a whole different any kind of approach than anybody else. And so right now I'm doing property and casualty for commercial insurance. So my thing right now is, hey, look, right now our world is in a world of hurt. All these businesses are getting absolutely killed. And so I'm coming in with, hey, look, let me help you out. Like I really, the resources that we have, we're the largest private brokerage in the entire country. And what we have, the resources behind us and the skill set and the experience, we can go in and basically, you're struggling, you're trying to shut your program, you're trying to shut your business down. Well, we can help you with the way that we approach it to keep that going. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where I'm going right now. And the thing about it is that it's been one of those to where my wife said, hey, are you gonna be able to do this? Are you gonna be able to love this and go down this path? Right. And as I got to know the team and as I got to know the business more, I've been joined on in July, and I've been enjoying this even more so now. I'm learning a ton because there's a ton of shit you gotta learn, right? A lot of stuff you gotta go into. But at the end of the day, the thing that I enjoy about it is I'm able to reach out to guys in my network and sit down with them and go through a process of bringing our team behind me and sit down with them and go, look, we know you're hurting right now. Here's how we can help you. You've done this. When I asked you to donate money back to Washington State, when I asked you to step up, you always stepped up. Now it's my turn to step up for you, kind of a deal. And so I like that aspect, and I'm learning as I go along, and there's a lot of little intricacies and whatnot, but it's been really good in that sense. And being able to go out there and talk to guys and learn the business world and to kind of go across that whole aspect has been really good for me. You know what I mean? So I'm still doing, like, I've been coaching my son's little league teams all along, the 7-on-7s. I'm still doing all that kind of stuff. He's getting a little bit bigger. Now I'm going to go to my 7-year-old and start doing all of his. They've asked me to, at my daughter's high school, they asked me to go coach over there, and we just moved to Camas about 1.5 years ago. So I'm just like, hey, look, let me get my feet wet. Got a new position, got a new job. Let me get my feet wet, and then maybe I'll start helping out in that sense. So ball's always going to be in me. Ball's always going to have that aspect. But at the end of the day, like I said before, I mean, my biggest focus and my biggest concern are my 3 kids, right? Like my wife and my 3 kids. And so how can I go and benefit their lives and be able to pay for my daughter if she wants to go to college, or if she wants to do this, or be able to create a career that I can look 10 years down the road and see myself continue to do this and grow and build a pretty good lifestyle for yourself. You know what I mean? Because the best part about it is you can create your own hours, like you create when you're going in, you create when you're doing this, you create your meetings. And so if you want to work, just like you're saying, ain't nobody telling you, barking you over your shoulder of if you got to go to the gym or not. But if you're self-motivated and you're pushing yourself, you can do yourself in it. And so learning that aspect of it all and seeing how it's all going to develop. So that's kind of where I'm going now and where my path is and who I'm with and how that whole thing's going. But I'm still talking to, the hard part is like, so Rolovich is over the head coach over at Washington State right now. Okay. I've known Rolo since I was 20 years old, the last 20 years. Okay. The OC quarterback coach over there, he was the best man in my team. I've known him since 7th grade. They're like my boys, and so, and there's a couple other guys in that staff that I know very, very well. And so the hard part is those guys that are there, and, Rolo's like, hey, look, we're going to get you back here one day. I was like, we'll find out about that. But there's always going to be that aspect of football, because that's what we've done our whole lives, and so one thing I'd encourage to you is, as you're going through this journey that you're going through and what your experiences are, continue to network, continue to build that base, continue to build those connections, because those are going to be things that when it's all said and over, instead of you going and delivering pizzas at your mom's place, you're actually able to go to step in somewhere and to go and create your next career, right? It's always going to be a next career. And that was one of the things that got to me that I didn't realize my rookie year in the NFL. Everybody, and when I mean everybody, I mean everybody in the locker room, all they talked about 80% of the time, outside of, when we're sitting around BS and not talking about ball or anything like that, all they talked about was, what are you investing in? What's your next career after football? How are you going to set yourself up for afterwards? All of them, And so that was one of the things I'm sitting there going, well, shit, I'm just living a dream right now. Why would I think about I'm just trying to get by today's practice and make the team and, keep going in this sense. And they're talking about, what are you investing in? What are you putting money in? How are you building your career afterwards, And one of the guys that I leaned on through my transition was Robbie Toback. And Robbie, he played at Washington State, played in the NFL for a ton of time. He partnered up with somebody. He's running his own insurance company out in Seattle, done a very good job for himself, So we started talking about it, and he was like, yes, the way you approach things and the way you everything I just talked about of your service and you love helping people, he goes, you're gonna love this and you're gonna crush it. Like it's gonna be something for you that you have to understand that, like I was saying earlier, that stigma of what other people think of oh, well, he's an insurance guy. How fun is that? What's cool is that? I could care less about what they think about, right?
Yeah.
Like you could care less about anybody telling you, hey, look, why are you being a pizza guy when you're 28 living at your mom's place? Because you know why? Because I'm living a fucking dream right now when I go overseas and I play and I'm able to do all these things. We have to get out of our own heads and our own way of what others think, and all only matter about what we truly care about, right? And if that's all we're there for, and if we figure that out, man, that's when life gets really fun. That's when life gets really fun because you don't worry about all the little things. You enjoy it to the fullest, and you make the decisions that's right for yourself, not for anybody else or their visions of you or their viewpoints of you or any of that stuff. And I think that that's one of the things that I learned throughout my process of going through things, because I was always that guy where everybody was looking in, right? Like me living in Pullman was in a small fishbowl. And then when I went to the store or I was coaching my kids' teams or I spoke at whatever events or did anything, all these eyes were always on me in that sense. And so I felt like I had to appease that vision of people coming into me. And so that taught me, going through my experiences and everything there, taught me it doesn't matter about those guys.
Yeah.
Like those are the last guys that we should be worried about, And so I'm grateful to kind of learn that process as I'm going through now. Shit, I'm 41 years old and besides living through a pandemic right now, I'm happier than it's ever been. Like everything has been great. And so that's one of the things that I encourage you to do, and encourage anybody out there listening to this. Forget about what anybody else's visions are about you, or their their viewpoints or thoughts about you. Whatever you want to do, man, enjoy it and go from there.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I'm grateful to get that. And that's like, to your point of the networking thing, that's been such a cool thing with doing the podcast. And whether it blows up or not, like in my mind, like I said, I see myself playing for another 5 to 10 years, and also starting to kind of get some other ideas with other ways to make a little bread on the side, whether it's just teaching, or I got a couple other ideas with some bigger things that still need to iron out before I really talk about them. And, but I look at the podcast, shit, if I would love it if in 10 years, 5 years, it has grown and done that. And, it could be the thing. 'Cause I'm still trying to get my mind right with like the idea of money. 'Cause I think growing up, I've always kind of had a weird vision of money due to people in my family, and like almost thinking money equals a certain amount of unhappiness from what I'd seen around me. And so getting that wired, but the greatest thing about being out here, I've learned to like live just so simply. But also it's just because it's me. And I know I think eventually there'll be someone else I got to take care of, and maybe a little one, and so I know, and so, but it's been so cool with this podcast because, like I would love to hit you up normally, but it's hard in today's day and age to just have a conversation, like to just say, hey, let's Zoom for an hour and a half or 2 hours or whatever it is. Like we all have lives, but then this has built this thing, and then someone else sees it, and it just throughout this entire thing, the network is building, and I'm getting to like reconnect with it. Like we probably haven't talked shit since, in person, last time I saw you, I think was at Idaho when I was at North Dakota, and we said what's up pregame, and like
been a long time,
fucking 8-9 years ago, and so now we get to talk, and like it's cool because all the people that I've had on so far, whether it be a good friend that I've talked to the day before, or somebody like you I haven't seen in 8-9 years, like now it's like, shit, what's Gesser up to? Like it makes it so now there's that connection. And so that's kind of where I'm thinking to take this thing that I'm excited about.
No, and you should be. I think you got to really coin and rely on your tag phrase, because it's awesome. Living for a living is like something that you can push out there that you put some your marketing brains behind, and how to position it and what to push out there, and do the editing. And I think that, especially we talked about earlier, timing, right? The timing couldn't be better.
Yes.
Your timing couldn't be better for something like that. A phrase like that, the way you approach life, the way you look at life, your experiences, what you're going through. People would pay to do what you're doing. Like literally, you're getting paid to do it. People would pay to go and be like, I get to go and travel and play a game and hang out and do like. They would be like, sign me up. Like, let's go. I'll pay $10,000 for that. I'll pay $15 for that.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, right? And so, take that to your advantage. You know what I mean? Like you've gone through and you've had highs and lows just like anybody else has in life, right? And you've been able to make the best out of certain situations. You got a great perspective and great viewpoint of what you're talking about of like, hey, do I want this money? Do I not want this money? Do I want to have certain stigma? Do I want to have certain ties? I've seen a lot of different good things and bad things across the board. And so it's just like, I think that the conversation, like I talked about, in regards to with the money aspect, I think it's a conversation I talked about with my daughter doing her high school paper, right? And she goes, at the end of the day, talking about the guns and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, at the end of the day, it's not the guns that are bad. It's the people that have them.
For real.
Same thing with the money. It's not the money that's bad. It's the people and how they perceive it and how they use it, right? And so that's the way I think that as you approach things and as with your unique view set and your experiences, man, you start pushing that stuff out there and you start pushing content out there. And it'll be special. I think it could be really special. So, and if I could help out in any way, I'm here for you. I've been a fan for you since high school days, since back in the camp days and all that jazz.
Man.
And that's the fun part, man. That's the fun part of living life and having experiences and creating that network and keeping in touch. And you're that guy that is not going to be scared. Like I'm saying, you're doing stuff right now that is a lot of people would fear. Okay. Right. Being independent, going out on a limb, not knowing what's next, not understanding how this whole thing, you are living a lot of people's dreams in a sense of you have that fearless mentality. Right. And so if you can portray that as you go through your experiences and push that out in your podcast or however you're going to go and push content out in a sense, that's going to be very valuable. You know what I mean? That's going to be very valuable. So I'm excited for you, man, and I hope that I can help out in any way, shape, or form. If you start getting some things going and you get some marketing ideas out there, you start going to your next stage. Like I said, I know some pretty good people out there, so some guys that can fund some things. And so if that's needed, let me know. So I'd love to help you out.
Man, I appreciate that big time. I mean, do you have a little more time? I have just I wanted to ask you a couple. I'm happy how this went because we just fucking flowed. But I wrote down like 2 or 3 questions. I like to just let it rock for the most part. But you got a couple. You all right? All right, cool. Like I just wanted to know, like, because I mean, dude, like we talked about earlier, even though I don't know how you view it in your mind of only being in the NFL for 1 year, but like to me, that shit's the coolest thing in the world. Like that was like. I would be the same way, Pete, you say people would pay to be what I'm doing right now. I would pay some big bread to be that 1 year that you did that. And so, I mean, like, how would you describe that year and like being in the league and like you got some good stories about it? Like, how, it's because when you were in Tennessee, it was, I mean, McNair, was Eddie George still there?
Eddie George there.
Devon Curse. I mean, that was when you guys had the true like baby blue unis, like everyone was using them in Madden, like, so I mean, how was that, man?
It was cool. I mean, the whole experience, to bring it back to the whole life thing a little bit more. So you got to understand this. So getting there and going through that process, it was tough because picture my senior year in college. All right. So I'm going through my senior year in college and we're going for, we're number 4 in the country.
Right.
I'm going for the Heisman, going through the whole thing. And right after Halloween, okay, basically almost similar around the time we're at now. I mean, probably a couple weeks back of the year, I find out that my girlfriend is pregnant. Right.
Okay.
And so now we're sitting there going, okay, things change a little bit as far as your perception, your purpose, right? And so now,
whoa, that's a lot to process in the national title Heisman run. Whoa, okay, yeah.
Yes. So in the middle of that whole thing, that's what comes across, right? So me doing the compartmentalizing that I'm able to do. I'm like, okay, that I understand that, not to be dissensitive or anything, but I'm gonna put that over here for right now because I got this other stuff I gotta, you know. And so going through and then going through the whole combine and going through that whole process, and then going as a free agent, that was probably the hardest thing ever, because they had some stigma on me with not only my height, but the surgeries that I had with my ankles and the injuries that I took place in Washington State. And so they thought that was going to play a factor down the road. So teams that were going to draft me in the 4th, 5th, 6th round backed away.
Okay.
And so guys were getting drafted that should have, I mean, they weren't even close to where I was at, in a sense. And this is the way I think about it. But going to Tennessee as a free agent. So I go to Tennessee as a free agent. And as you know, like being a free agent, there was only 2 guys the only 2 free agent quarterbacks that made rosters that year. Myself and Tony Romo. Those are the only 2 guys. So he played obviously a lot longer, had a better career than I did. But we were the only 2 guys that were free agent quarterbacks that stuck onto any rosters that year. And so going through that process of literally going to camp, flying back to Seattle, having my daughter, and then literally 2 weeks later flying back to Tennessee, going through camp again, fall camp, not knowing, okay, as I'm going and getting in the huddle and I'm handing the ball off to Eddie George, like at my neck, because he's so freaking tall, right? Like you're going to hand the ball off and he's, 6'3", 6'4", and usually you go down, but I'm like this, like, here you go. And you're sitting there in the huddle and it's a stretch play to the outside. And he's like, you better get it there. I'm on a track. And if you're not there, you better get it there. And so you just like get the snap and you're like sprinting to get out there to get in the ball. And this, you have Javon Curse chasing your neck, chasing you down. You got Keith Bullock on the outside. Keith Bullock, man. He made this one play. He's an outside linebacker. And simple flat slant concept. And so I'm watching him and he's over here and he turns to take a flat, right? And so as he's turning, I'm throwing it right behind his head to the slant coming behind. He's literally running this way, going this way, turns his hand back like this, catches the ball one hand in the same stride, and it continues to go down the sideline for a pick 6. And I'm sitting there going, how did that just happen? Like he didn't turn his hips and turn back and catch the ball this way. And he was literally running this way. Ball was there. He just stuck his hand back, caught it, and just kept going. And I'm sitting there going, okay, I'm on a different level right now. This is a whole different level. But to the stories of going through and being pulled into Coach Fisher's office and him talking about, hey, look, here's what we're doing with you. We're keeping you on, yada, yada, yada. I mean, those are, you go from highs to lows across all boards. And Steve McNair of being one of the best leaders, one of the best like friends. Like, you got to understand when you get to that level. So even guys like Neil O'Donnell and Billy Bullock, okay, and myself. So all 3 of us were fighting for 2 positions basically. Right. They also had another guy or 2 other guys that were there earlier that got cut. But at the end of the day, it was us 3. And so they're not going to help me because I'm trying to take their job. Right. Yeah. But Steve was awesome because I wasn't going to take his job. Right. And so I knew I was trying to make the team. Okay. And it was hard to, you don't have those friendships and whatnot. You develop a couple of them with some rookies and you kind of go across the board with receivers or running backs or DBs or whoever. But other than that, it's like, it was a little bit different in that sense. And then you fast forward. So I'm sitting there, okay, now look, I just got to make the 3rd string quarterback. How can I just make the 3rd string quarterback, right? And so that year, make the team. Then the next year, same thing comes through. Now it's myself, Billy Bullock, and Steve McNair. All right, same guys, same thing, going through preseason. They bring in other guys. They're not worth anything. They all get cut, like one after another, after another, after another. Then it comes to the final cut day, and I'm still doing, like, playing really well preseason. Every time I get put in a game, we're scoring. Most of the time I get put in is 3rd, 4th quarter. We're down by 10. We come back and we win. Like, everything has been going well. Well, at the end of the season, at the end of final cuts, make the team, and then all of a sudden, like a couple of days later, like, hold on, bring me into the office. And they said, hey, look, we're going to let you go. And they're bringing somebody else in because they felt like they needed more depth because Billy got hurt the year before and so did Steve. And me going into my 2nd year, they needed somebody else to have more experience. So they brought in I think they brought in freaking Jesse Palmer, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh.
Can't remember who it was. So anyway, they brought in somebody else that had like 6-7 years. And I'll never forget the time when Mike Heimerdinger was our OC, and he sat me down. He's like, it just seemed like you were happy to be here. And I'm like, ooh. Because as you know me, I've always been the undersized guy. I've always been the guy that's never had the biggest arm. So I had to outwork everybody, whether it was in a weight room, whether it was on the field, whether it was off the field, whether it was a film room, studying, whatever it was. And so to me, it was like, you didn't work hard enough to be here. I'm like, screw you, in a sense. And that hurt me, and it killed me for like 5-6 years, okay? Fast forward to when I start coaching. So now after Tennessee, I go and play in the CFL, play in the arena ball, play for, another 4 years. And then I start going to coaching, and literally would have dreams and nightmares of Tennessee and all kinds of stuff, and still trying to find within myself, like, what the fuck did he mean by saying that,
Yeah.
And I finally figured it out once I started coaching. What he meant was he wanted me to go after the position, to go after Steve's job.
Uh-huh.
He didn't want me just to be the third string quarterback. So I started looking back at it. I was like, when I started playing in 8th grade, what I try to do? I wanted to be a starting quarterback, so I became a starting quarterback. Okay, intermediate, 9th grade, JV, same thing. Varsity, same thing. So I was always trying to be the starting quarterback. But for some reason, when I got to Tennessee, I wasn't trying to be the starting quarterback. I was trying to make the roster and be the backup, right? And what he was trying to, in his words, what he was wanting me to be was to go after that starting quarterback position, right? Even though I wasn't going to beat out Steve, but he wanted me to approach it and go after it in that sense, right? And that to me rang true 1,000%. And the only person I could be mad at it was myself, right? Because of the way I approached it. And so that was one of the things that I used as I went through coaching wise, and just passing along to other kids and other guys, is it's all about your approach. It's all about how you go after things. It's all about what your mindset is when you go after it. Because even if you think, like you're saying, I probably messed up myself because I didn't think I could make it to the NFL. If that's there and you have that doubt, there's no doubt you're not gonna do it, right? 100%. And so same thing with me. If I thought that I was never gonna beat out Steve, then I was never gonna beat out Steve, right? Yeah. Rather than going out there and saying, screw this, I'm just as good as him. I can make all these throws, I can make all these plays, I can do everything he's gonna do. I'm gonna go out there and show it, right? And so your approach in life is everything, right? Is everything. And so that was one of the things that I'm grateful. Now it sucked going through that, but there's a reason why I went through it. I went through it to learn. Right? I went through to learn the process. Now, I didn't learn the next day. I learned freaking 6-7 years down the road. Imagine that painful path of learning it 6-7 years down the road, right? And it was like, for I don't know why. It's like one thing just popped in my brain. And I was like, no shit. And it was like, he's right. Like I had nothing to say about it, but he was right, And so, so the time in Tennessee was obviously awesome. One of the funniest stories I have is we're coming back from Jacksonville. Okay. And as a rookie, you have to, you carry bags and you bring, breakfast and you do all that jazz, right? Well, sat right behind me in the plane. Okay. So he picked me up on first day one. He was like, all right, you're sitting next to me. You got my bag, right? All right. Okay. I got your bag. So, and it's just a little duffel you bring in, whatever. So bring it in, put it in Bubba's deal. And you kind of go and you do the same thing as you get off and like, hey, here you go, yada, yada, yada. And it's just more of a respect thing. It's more of like they mess around with you for anything else, right? So now we're probably like week 7 or 8, halfway through the season, and we're going down to play Jacksonville. Well, he's from Florida, okay? So he's down there with all his boys, down there with his homies, okay? So now we come back, and as we get off the bus, he's like, hey, Gesser, get my bag. I was like, all right, got your bag. Bring it in. So I'm going through like the security stuff with his bag. I'm going through like bringing his bag on the plane. Bring it in, put it up on top, go through the whole thing. Like halfway through the flight, we're over about 30 minutes from landing. And all of a sudden, I start smelling like, what the hell is that? Dude had a brick of weed in his bag. Okay. He broke it out. And now he's breaking it and like passing it out to guys on the plane. On the plane before everybody gets off. So obviously it stinks, right?
Yeah.
So guys are now bringing their cologne out and they're spraying everywhere, right? And so now I'm sitting there going, did I brought that on a plane. Like, what the shit, right? So I'm sitting there
You're
going,
the drug smuggler.
again, I could have got caught for that, you know? And so now I'm like, oh my gosh. And so the next week we come up and we had a home game or the next travel game, I forget what it was. He was like, hey, Guess, give me back. I was like, nah, man, I'm good. He goes, what? I go, hey, look, I get it. I understand the whole thing. I ain't going to do what I did from Jacksonville because I don't know what you got in there. I have no idea what's going on. So if you want to take me up, you want to dunk me in the ice cold tubs, whatever you have to do, you have to do. But I ain't doing that no more. He's like, he looked at me, he goes, I got you. And he goes and calls some other rookies, like, hey, come get my bag. And so it was like after that, I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to carry his bag anymore. But yeah, man, now that was probably one of the stranger, funnier stories. I mean, there's a lot of other stories in that sense. And I mean, hopefully it doesn't get anybody in trouble by saying that or get pushed out there.
I think you're all right at this point now, you know, I mean, and there's all the reports out now that, you know, that what 50-60% of the league smokes. And I mean, it's not a PED, you know, it's with Gordon and, you know, Percy Harvin's now coming out saying he's been high for every single game. And I had the chance, I was in Orlando one off season ago working at Tom Shaw Performance, the combine kind of training facility with a bunch of different dudes, and a couple of pros are back in town and working out, and I won't name names because they're still in there and I don't want to get them jammed up, but you know, they're all talking to the rookies and saying, you know, hey, as long as you pass the first one, you know, you're good for the rest of it's a one time a year thing, you know, just pass the first one and then you know, stop in April or March or whatever, you know, and then you can get tested between like May and July or whatever it is. It's just chill for those 4 or 5 months and then you're good, you know? And so like, that was really fun for me to like hear just from guys giving advice on something that, you know, it was smart to give the advice because you guys get hemmed up for it. And then like a Josh Gordon, it ruins his career. And whether that's right or wrong, like, you know, just imagine some of the guys that probably didn't play because of, you know, in my opinion, I've kind of, I don't really smoke much anymore, but I grew up being quite the stoner and just thinking like, it's just a plant that probably ruined a lot of people's career, and whether it's right or wrong, like it's interesting to hear. So dude, that's a good one.
That's the other funny thing is like now with like crack and meth being legal in Oregon. So can the Oregon State players like just, are they good? Right?
Yeah. Yeah. No.
What does that mean?
Dude, yeah, I know, because it's insane how we're getting to that point. Like, crazy, and I'm all for like freedom, but like, whew, like there's a limit for everything, you know, you can only go so far for everything. And no, that's a really good one. I might have to clip that one up because that one's pretty fucking good. That's a really,
I don't know. I don't know if you want to market that one out there. Don't market that one out
there.
But,
okay. And we're late in it right now, so only the true people who've watched all the way through will we'll get the sneak peek on that one. My one other one I got because.
Or you can do it and you can bleep out the name if you want to.
Yeah, and then say you got to watch the full one, and then at 2 hours, you know, I've gotten like. You're helping my YouTube ad revenue at this point right now, you know.
There you go.
But yeah, my one other one I wanted to ask was my dad was buddies to some degree with Coach Price all growing through. I'm not exactly sure what the connection exactly was, but I just know since I was a little kid, I had a 2 Joey Wazzu hat. Mike Price, you know, signed Mike Price thing. And so, I mean, and I know you and Coach had a relationship. And so like, what's your best Coach Price story?
Oh man, MP. We've had a few, obviously. I think, gosh, Probably one that sticks out was right when I first got there. So growing up in Hawaii, you're coached very hard. Let's put it that way. Okay. Very in your face. There's no coddling. It's you gotta rise to the occasion, right? And with the program that I came from was very, very hard in that sense as well too. And so I got to Washington State, and I redshirted my first year. And so going through redshirting, I just sat back and observed, right? I was watching film with other guys, listening to what they were saying from coach to player across the boards. And I noticed there was a lot of coddling, a lot of like, man, if I would have said that, I would have got slapped across the face back in Hawaii. Like, there's no way I would have had that excuse or had this response or any of that stuff, right? So now we're going to spring ball. We're competing for the starting job, and there's 3 of us, and so Eric Price his son is the quarterback coach, and so I kind of go into him prior and I say, hey coach, can I sit down for a couple minutes to talk to you? He's like, yeah. I said, what's up? It's like, hey, when we start going out there, if I mess up, can you tell me I mess up? And he was like, I started like laughing. He's like, yeah, of course I'll tell you mess up. Like, where's this coming from? What are you talking about? And I go, I don't mean any disrespect or anything, but I just noticed that throughout the season, there's like excuses for everything. And it was either, I slipped on this thing, or my pinky wasn't on the ball the right way, or the wind was blowing this, or it was like something, right? And I go, that's not how I go. Like, if I mess up, let me know if I mess up, And so he starts laughing. He's like, yes, I'm on you. I got you. He's like, I'll let you know you messed up, right? And he goes, you'll learn one day though that I can do that. I can do that to you, but I can't do it to some other guys, because if I do, they'll fold like a cheap lawn chair.
Yeah.
I know you can take it. So you'll realize that I have to approach things differently. Coaching, everybody's not coached the same. Kind of like back to our story of life. Everybody's not the same. Everybody's going to be coached differently. Everybody's going to have a different perspective, right? A different upbringing, a different experience. So fast forward. Now it's the first day we're out of practice. Okay. We're spring ball out of practice. I'm like, all right, here we go. We're going to get things rolling. I want to start off on a good foot. Well, back in Hawaii, again, I'm going to go back to Hawaii. Wearing socks back in Hawaii, it was like you never wore socks. You wore like the little ankle socks, right? So you never had like socks. So like the thinnest socks you could possibly find. So you tie your shoe tight. I was a guy, I was kind of proud that I could move around a little bit. I can have some, some jukes, some quicks and stuff. And so I felt like the big cushiony socks, I'd slide in my shoe. Like if I had the big cushion ones, I kind of slide in there. I didn't get the grip that I wanted. Stupid in the head, whatever it was. It is what it was, right?
Hey, it's not weird if it works,
Exactly, right? So we go out to practice, and I'm wearing like my little booty sock, like the no sock look, like ankle sock, right? Because I want to be.
And this is before the no socks were cool too.
Yes, this is nobody. Yeah, so Hawaii started way before everybody else, right? So I'm out there, and we're literally at stretch lines. I bend over, stretching, whatever. And all of a sudden, now Mike Price. So obviously Eric Price talked to Mike Price about our little meeting and how everything went. So now we're out there in stretch lines and, going down and whatnot. And MP, Coach Price, is like probably 30 yards away. And he's like, are those Cougar issue socks? And I'm like, he's yelling at somebody. I look down, I'm kind of stretching. And then he kind of starts walking towards me. He's like, are those motherfucking Cougar issue socks? And he's yelling at me. It's stretch line, so everything is quiet. Everybody's like, what the hell is going on? Like, he's just yelling at somebody. And I'm like, oh, somebody get your ass chewed right now. Like, and I'm just kind of ignoring him. I keep stretching. And all of a sudden, now he's running from me. He's like, are those motherfucking Cougar issue socks? And I'm like, oh, he's talking to me. I go, and I'm trying to compete for the job. I'm a freshman. I'm like, holy shit. And everybody's looking at me. I'm like, yeah. He goes, oh, those are the ones that Milt gave you from the equipment room? And I'm sitting there going, yeah, those are the ones that Milt gave you. Get your ass in there and get the right fucking socks on. And I'm like, okay. So I literally kicked out of practice to go put the right socks on, right? And so his whole point was, hey, look, I don't care who you are. You're gonna be like you're gonna get treated. Everybody's gonna get treated the same, right? Like you mess up, I'm gonna get on you. And he kind of went back afterwards. He was like, hey, you said you wanted me to tell you if you messed up. Like, I told you messed up, didn't I? And he kind of had a little smirk on his face. And so he was playing the whole game across the whole thing. But to that point, though, so from that, how funny is this, though? I look back and I think it's hilarious. So what I would do, okay, is I had the socks that they gave me, the long socks that go all the way up to the knee, you know, with a big cushion on the bottom. Like, oh, I hate that cushiony stuff. So I literally would cut the bottom off. I'd have my other socks, my little ankle socks, and then I'd have the long one and I just put it behind my heel, like in my shoe. And so it looked like I was wearing longer socks, but it was literally two different socks. And I mean, you think about all the stuff that players do and players go through and all the little things. But anyway, so that was probably one of my first impressionable Mike Price stories of that. And we can go across a bunch of different ones of, gosh, I would literally go out to like a summer job. I'd go out to his cabin in Coeur d'Alene. And I like strip down all his like the boat deck, you know, like the deck that goes out for the boat. Mm-hmm. I go and like strip it all down and like sand it and stain it and do all that stuff and like do jobs like that in the summertime for him up there. And I mean, it was just like he was that second dad that I appreciate. And I still talk to him probably like once every 2 weeks or so over text or over a phone call or something like that. We still play pretty close, you know. So anyway.
Dude, that's awesome. Are those Cougar issue socks, man? Yeah.
Are those fucking Cougar issue socks? I was like, yes. No, they're not.
That's great, dude. No, it's like I said, is knowing my dad growing, like that was always my goal, was like I've never even met the guy, but it's like I feel like through whatever I do, and now hearing these stories is cool. It's like when I got last one, I guess, and then, you know, I told you, 90 minutes, and now we're at 120. But like that your senior year of national championship run, Heisman run, you know, like in that, I mean, I killed everybody in NCAA football with the Cougars that year. Like that's so much fun to use. But like, how do you remember? I should have done I don't remember how'd that go? You know, what was how do you feel about that? Like, cause how did it, I'm blanking right now of how it got.
I gotcha.
Screwed, you know?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was obviously a run in itself. And then early on, the funny part, we go out to Ohio State, right? So we got to Ohio State and play them, and they ended up winning it that year. Okay. So we go out there, play them, and they have 110,000 in the horseshoe, and we're up. You know, they have Maurice Claret. That's his rookie year, his freshman year. And so we're up 7. We go out first drive of the game. We go right down the field. Boom, 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 touchdown, right? Well, right before we score, our starting left tackle breaks his ankle. Okay. So he breaks his ankle, so he's out. Well, we didn't travel, or something happened with somebody not traveling. So now our backup left tackle is our freshman or redshirt freshman backup right guard. He usually plays guard, pushes him out to left tackle. Okay. So now he's going up against Will Smith, who's played a long time in the NFL, big DN, right? They had guys on that team. So even they were heating me up the entire game, but even when they weren't heating me up, it felt like a blitz because they were just pressured the entire game, right? So long story short, we end up going and losing. We're up 7-6. You can hear a pin drop in the horseshoe, you know, going off the field. We're like, we got this one. Maurice Claret runs for like 215 or 200 plus yards in the second half. We can't score. And they end up beating us. I think it was, I can't remember what it was. It was like 16 or 14-7 or whatever it was, something like that, right? So after that game, I'm pissed, okay, because I know we're good and we should have beat them. And the refs were completely their side. Like the refs were literally, I'd be getting lit up in the backfield. I mean, hits were, nowadays you're sitting there going, that's got to be illegal. Like, and just being a human, it's got to be illegal. I mean, what we took back in the day is completely different than now. But, and the ref would literally be like, stop crying, stop your whining, stop bitching. Like, the white hat was telling that to me,
Wow.
And so so I was pissed. So I popped him, right? And somebody had asked something press wise, and they had a bunch of the Tostitos bags out, and because that the national championship was Tostitos Festival that year, right? And they had all the hats on and everything. And so I said something to the effect of, yeah, we should have got them. We gave them that game, yada, yada, yada. Popped off about the refs a little bit. And I said, if anybody thinks they're winning the national championship, there's no freaking way these guys are going to win the national championship because they're not that good, Well, what do they do? so anyway, so we bounce back. We have a good run. We beat, Carson Palmer and those guys up in Pullman, USC, and Troy Polamalu and that whole team. We kind of run through the pack, and then we get to the Apple Cup, right?
That's right.
And so we're in the Apple Cup, and we're up, I think we're up by 10 points with I don't know, somewhere in the fourth quarter, like seven minutes to go or whatever it was. And I got flushed out of the pocket and horse collared back, and there wasn't a penalty back in the day. Got horse collared back, and that's when I busted I tore my knee up, my meniscus, and then my ankle as well too.
That's right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I get hurt, and they end up going down the field. They end up coming back and tying it.
Who was the backup? Kegel. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So they end up going and tying it. And I think they hit a long one on true font with Reggie Williams down the sideline. I think Nate Robinson ended up having like a pick off of Kegel to help to get the field goal. And then we go into double overtime. And so I'm thinking that we're good. We're 7 minutes to go. We're up by 10. At that juncture, I think we were 4th in the country, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So if we win that game, I'm probably a finalist for the Heisman, and we have a shot of getting into the national championship game. We would have been 3 or 4. I can't remember what it was. But anyway, so ultimately we end up losing. So Kegel goes to throw. So we go into overtime. So now I'm like, okay, I got to come back in, right? So I'm going back to Coach Price going, hey, look, just put me in gun. Let me stand back in gun, and I'll figure it out. And he was like, there's no way. They took my helmet away. I was like, you're killing me right now, Yeah. And so we ultimately end up losing that one. They called Kegel was throwing like a bubble screen, and the guy tipped it, and they called it a backwards lateral, and they fumble, and they go and recover it, and that's the game. And so we're like, you got to be kidding me. So we lose that game, and that kind of screwed up stuff. But for whatever reason that year, I can't remember what happened, but we had UCLA the following week down in UCLA at that essential point, because we lost to UW. USC had lost to us, and so we're 1-1 tie. So now if we lose to UCLA, USC goes to the Rose Bowl. We're getting out, right? And so so we go down to the Rose Bowl to come back to play in the Rose Bowl, right, against UCLA. And so now I got my leg freaking taped up all the way to my knee and my ankle and all that kind of stuff. Half of the fans there are USC fans because they're going against us because they want us to lose so they could go to the Rose Bowl, right? So stadium is fucking packed. It's loaded. And it was one of those games to where it didn't start off very good. I remember I ended up throwing a pick six. I tried to run down the sideline to get the guy. My knee got bent back again. Coach was trying to pull me out, and I was like, ain't no fucking way you're pulling me out of this game. There's no way you're pulling me out of this game after the Apple Cup, right? And then all of a sudden it was it clicked, and literally everything was in slow motion. I felt I couldn't move, and one of my things was I couldn't move, but I was limited. But I still feel like I saw everything else in slow motion. I mean, I would literally come up to the line, and I'm looking at the line, and we didn't even have plays in the playbook. And I'm going back to 3 weeks back, and I'm going to the line. On-line scrimmage like, hey, you guys remember 14X? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, block it like 14X, right here. And they go and cross block it and run a running play and just go and shoot for 30 yards. And then we go and so it got to a point to where it was, I think, middle of the second quarter. Coach Price was like, you got it. He wouldn't even signal to play. And he just here's a formation here, like just go, you got it, you know, because I knew what they were doing. I knew how they were playing it. I saw their line, where their stunts were going, how they're trying to gap things, and just basically call it run plays, screens, pass plays. And it just felt like it was one of those games where you feel like you're in the zone.
Yeah.
And that was one of those games. It didn't start that way, but it definitely went through. And then we ended up beating them down there to clinch to go to the Rose Bowl. So that was kind of like the crescendo, the final moment of going through that whole thing. And so that was cool in that moment. And then we came back down to play against Oklahoma, who at preseason was preseason number 1, and they had a squad.
Jason White was a QB, yeah? Or
no, yeah, I think it was White. But they had their defense. I think like 7 of the guys, 2 went first round, 7 got drafted in the top 4 or 5 rounds or 8, whatever it was, like 7 rounds. And I mean, it was ridiculous. And we went out there, and it was one of those games to where, just like I talked about UCLA, how clean it was and easy, it was like complete opposite. The line was coming back to me going, guess we don't know where they're coming from. We didn't know how to like slide. They're showing this, they go back there. And I'm like, all right, I'll figure it all out. And of course, not being able to move killed, you know?
Yeah.
And then there was, you know, we had some good plays down the field, got into the red zone. We couldn't punch it away. And they were just better than us, you know, and they ended up beating us that day. But that was kind of the senior year in the Rose Bowl run. And you know, the cool thing about it was that was our back-to-back 10-win season, right? That was the first time in school history that we ever had, number 1, back-to-back bowl seasons, number 2, back-to-back 10-win seasons. And then the following year after I left, I always tell people that I was probably more proud about the following year when they went down and beat Cougar, and the crew went down and beat Texas and Vince Young in the Holiday Bowl.
Yeah, I went to that game. I was at that game actually with my pops.
Okay, so I was more proud. That was my first year in Tennessee, and so I was more proud of that, because what that meant was what we had built there was going to carry on, right? It wasn't just because of us. And one of the things I remember on my recruiting trip, going back there on my recruiting trip, I remember being at a party and some girls like, "Why do you want to come to Washington State?" Like we only went once every like 4 or 5 years, and we just went to the Rose Bowl. That was with Leaf, right? So we just went to the Rose Bowl, so I'm sure we're gonna be shitty for the next 5 years, you know. And where I came from my high school, just like you, very successful, we never lost a game, right?
Yeah.
Like never lost a game, won every single time. So I'm like, okay, well, we're about to change that. And so it took a couple years to kind of get that culture and that everything changed, and we did, you know. And so then we had 3 consecutive 10-win seasons. And so you're sitting there going, okay, what we did here has never been done. Number 1 before. Number 2, can show that we can do it here, and it can go on for a long time. So I made a difference, right? Like that was my whole thought process, was making a difference, making a factor. And so that's what I took great pride in that sense. Now, obviously, some things happened afterwards, and it fell off, and it came back up. And you know, right now, I think with Rollo and those guys, I think they'll continue some of the success that Leach has had and what he's done there. And so, but that was definitely, obviously, a magical year, and just a sense of the guys. I mean, you look back at those teams, we only had a couple guys that went to the league. I mean, Trufant was a first-round draft pick.
Right.
Ryan Long was a 4th-round draft pick. I was a free agent. You know, a couple other guys that got free agencies, but I don't think they stuck. So you look at the next year's team. I think Eric Coleman played for a while. You know, Jason David played for a while. So we had some guys defensively. Frampton, Carl Pema.
Abdullah, was he there yet or no?
He was. Hamza was there. So Hamza played for a while, and then his brother came in afterwards. So, I mean, we were kind of like DBU from
right.
You know, from that 03, 02, 03 time to like 06, 07. I mean, we pushed out a bunch of guys defensively, but my point being is that Rose Bowl year, we didn't have like just standout guys. We had a good team.
Yeah.
We had this thing, and I remember guys like Fred Chavies, and even the year before my junior year, like Lamont Thompson and those guys, to where you make a mistake as a quarterback, you know this, you throw a pick, it's like the worst feeling in the world. right? Like you throw a pick or you fumble the ball, you turn the ball over, and you're jogging out the field, and the defense is coming on the field. You put them in a shitty spot, right? And I remember, and this is like the worst feeling. We on our teams, as I'm running off, they'd be like, "Guess, don't even sweat it. We're gonna get the ball back for you right now. Like, keep your helmet on. Don't go fucking sit down because we're gonna get it right back." And I'm sitting there going, "Okay." Like, and so just to know that you guys had your back, and now that's how it was. Like, defense gets scored on. I'm on the sideline. Don't worry, we're gonna go down and score right here. Like, don't even sweat it. We got this right now. And our team aspect was so good, and it was something that our approach, like I talked about earlier, our mentality was, we don't care who we're playing. We don't care if we're playing in the horseshoe against Ohio State. We didn't know who the fuck they were. You're gonna go to the national. You ain't that good. Like, you're not gonna win the national championship, and they win the whole thing that year. And that is validated to us. Like, we should have easily beat them. We could have easily won, gone down that same path. And so I think it just even more so validates everything else I was saying earlier. Of it's your approach, it's your demeanor, it's a team aspect in a sense of, man, we had each other's backs. Take care of those that take care of you. All those things came together, and having Coach Price lead the train for us was awesome. So it was a good little year. It was a good little year, that's for sure.
Man, yeah, that's awesome. Is to the point of that Texas game too. Boy, you'd never seen so many sad Texans in the parking lot after that game, because I mean, there was no respect for any of the Washington State fans or the team going into the game, and you could tell, like, pregame pep rally, tailgating, like Texas, they were being friendly with everybody because they viewed us as like not a threat. It was like, oh yeah, hey, yeah, we're all, this is fun. I'm glad we're playing you guys. And then after, I mean, the amount of just heads in the hands was something I'll remember forever, because I was shit like 12, 13 years old at the time, so that's a cool thing, dude. That's really cool. All right, last one. Sorry, I've said last one 2 times now. Favorite play, if it's third and 10, or whether goal line, you pick. What, we got one play we got to win with. What are we going with?
Golly, man, that's obviously, scenarios are scenarios, and you gotta go across the board. I was a big big guy that really loved the drag dig concept. You know what I mean? Whether it was from number 2 on the inside, or number 1 on the outside coming across, or 3 or 2 on the other side, or 1 on the other side coming across. However you want to look at that. I mean, nowadays there's a lot of mesh going across the board. We never really meshed it. We always had just a drag, and then we always had like the hunt route or somebody hooking behind. And then when I got to Idaho and started recreating some things too, having that little pivot with the dig behind it, and high-low and certain guys, those were always good. I love those. I love like little spot routes and sitting behind guys with bubbles. I mean, we did that in run and shoot a lot in Hawaii. So there's a handful of those, and then just that the goal line. I think any kind of goal line where it depends on what you're playing. If you have any kind of man, I love the aspect of 1 on the outside, 2 on the inside, 1 having to win on a slant or coming across and him going to the corner. I mean, it's a simple little transfer in that. And if you do get like a cover 7 or any kind of double ins or double outs as you're attacking the high lows of the zone, you know what I mean, forcing them to kind of do those things. So there's a lot of little things that we've learned across the going from one place to the other, and calling plays and morphing what your skill set guys you can have, or what you're able to do. And then obviously you go back to any highlight film. We go down if we're inside the 10-yard line at all. I mean, we had guys like Milton Wynn and Mike Bush and Marcus Williams. I mean, these guys were trees. So it was one of those like, here you go, go. You make me look good. I'll just put it out there for you, DeVar Darling. Hey, you go make that play, So it was, I had fun in those. I mean, and I'll say this, I think that fade ball is a lost art right now. Like, totally. And I always,
it's my favorite throw, hands down, my favorite throw.
And one of the best things that was taught to me was when my first year at Tennessee, it was early on with Coach Price, and then at Tennessee was reinforced. So Coach Price early on was like, why would you go and throw the ball out there where it's always 5 yards past the guy on the line on a fade ball? Like you have to drop it off the ceiling, right? If you put it to the sideline, he holds his line, you put it to the sideline. I don't care if he has to turn back and catch the ball over here, or if he goes over his outside shoulder and over there, right? I don't care if it's not in stride and he's not running for a touchdown. It's 50 yards down the field, right?
Yes.
And as long as we understand that, and you understand, you have that relationship with the receiver that he's going to be the only guy coming down with that ball, and you're either going to get a completion, incompletion, or a PI. Okay,
Yes.
2 of those 3 go in our favor, right? So if you understand where you're putting that ball and that he's not going to let that guy intercept it, 2 of those 3 come in our favor. So as long as you give him a chance, we're going to be, more than times than not, we're going to be successful, right? So he would hate when you overthrew anybody. Like, that's a fucking miss. Why? You got one-on-one. Why are you overthrowing him? Like, give him a chance, right? And so then reinforced at Tennessee, got more specific. It was like Coach Heimerdinger goes, you're throwing the ball 47 yards downfield, 3 yards from the sideline. That's your landmark. You hit your steps.
On 3 and a hitch?
You're going, right? It's either 3. It was either 3 and a hitch out of underneath, or it was 5 throw, right?
Okay.
So, and if you're in gun, it was basically depending on which foot got forward, it was 2 and a hitch or 3 and a hitch,
Gotcha.
But you're putting that ball out there, and also who's running, and if he's pressed or not. And this is all, you got how it factors in. So, but at the end of the day, he's like, you're putting that ball 47 yards downfield, 2 yards from the sideline. That's it. You do nothing else, because his job is to get there. Okay. And if you do your steps right, he does his stuff right, he's going to have a chance. And so that's all it was, is to a science in that sense. And even down the end zone, a lot of guys want to throw the fade ball, or they want to throw like back in the back corner. It's not the corner, it's the sideline.
Yes.
Right. They'll throw a fade ball, but put it to the sideline. And if he comes back this way and catches it, or he catches it this way, who cares? It's away from the defender. It's to the sideline. 9 times out of 10, he's not going to be able to catch it, and your guy's going to get it. And so I think that's definitely a play that, and people are talking about like, oh, you back shouldered him, or you did this, or you started the back shoulder, you started that. I was like, I was putting the ball to a spot, and I was putting it, if you want to call it back shoulder, I was making him stop and go down. I wasn't putting the ball on a line, though. I put a little arc into it, like a little 2 ball, just put it out there and know that he's going to turn around and get in his back shoulder. Okay, if we started that, then we started that, whatever it may be, right? But I'm just throwing to a spot to where I know that he's going to be able to make a play and the DB can't, And so, but I love all those kind of things. And it's cool to hear that you're able to be the QBOC, you know what I mean? Like, I felt like my one game where, my senior year, we did a lot of that stuff with Coach Price. We go back and forth. I had a lot of freedom to check in the line of scrimmage and call what I wanted to call. But we'd always, prep prior and all that kind of stuff. But that one UCLA game where he was just like,
that's so cool.
So that was, and it was one of our biggest games that we had to win, right? And so it was just one of those things where you get in that flow. So to hear that you're doing that right now, it's got to be tough, because you're overriding all the positions, right? You're like O-line, running backs, like you're saying, receivers, learning how to coach all the positions. But to be able to go out there and just feel the flow of the game, understand where they're at, call what you want to call, that's fun, man. That's fun. So.
No, dude, it's been a lot of fun. I mean, and I keep it pretty simple. I'm a big proponent on just like the zone read or zone lock, where I'm reading the backside linebacker, and if he jumps up, I'm hitting that slant behind him, and out here it's like, if you just keep it simple, run hitch. I mean, in anything, if you run hitches, slants, outs, and verts well, like, and then you can run the ball, you can win, you can score, and so no, it's funny, I had my last game in JUCO, my JUCO coach is kind of who I credit my ability to really be an OC and do it on the field and, be able to coach. And I mean, that guy was the best for me, Coach Byrne. And that my last game in JUCO is he kind of did the same thing. Is like, I spent a lot of time with him. We'd prepared a lot, and I'd get out there, and by the second half of that game or so, he's just like, all right, we're just running doubles, check with me. and we'd normally do check with me, check with him. And he goes, hey, at halftime, he goes, hey, check with me is you call it. And I was like, okay, let's go, you know? And so that was like a breeding ground for me of like getting into doing what I'm doing now. And the toughest part for me with the coach is like being the coach that has to get on a guy, you know, and you know, sometimes and balancing who I can get on, who I can't, you know, and I'm fiery, you know, I'm intense. And so, you know,
yeah, you have that competition in us. You got that competitiveness. I mean, that's good though. That's good.
Yeah. And so balancing kind of those two things are probably the toughest, but it's been fun. And actually where I'm going to play this next year, I'm just going to be QB, and which I've always been kind of a little leery about, because the one other time I was going to do that, it didn't work out because the guy had no fucking clue what he was doing. And we didn't go over protection one time, and we couldn't block a backside blitz off of trips to save our lives. I mean, and anyway, this guy that I'm going to, he knows his stuff, and I got to see his whole catalog from the year before. And like I said, they won the championship. So I was like, all right, I'm feeling confident going into this one. So I'm excited for that, bro. I'd love to, I mean, we'll wrap it up, but man, is whenever this temporary pandemic ends, dude, anytime you want to come out to Europe and, you know, just whatever, wherever I am, you know, I have one of my ideas with, like I said earlier, kind of making some more money, or even just helping out, would be start doing some camps and stuff out here. And so, you know, like I said, I'm glad we did this to kind of reconnect the connection. And
exactly.
You know, I'm going to make sure next time we talk won't be fucking 2029, you know? So,
I back you too, man. I appreciate that. And no, I mean, you hitting me up and asking me to do this, I appreciate you. I appreciate the thoughts, and it's been fun. And I'm looking forward to see where it comes next from it, you know? So
for real, brother. Alrighty, man.
For a living.
Yes, living for a living, my man. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to keep it going. So thank you again, brother. Really appreciate it, man.
Yep. All right, bro. We'll keep that beard rocking, and safe travels to your new spot. And good seeing you. I'm sure I'll talk to you soon. All right.
Much love. Definitely. Much love. See you guys.
That guy. What's up, man?
Living for a living, baby. How you doing?